Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto's life changes after managing to stop Sasuke's attempted desertion in the Valley of the End Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The Valley of the End. Rasengan. Chidori. Naruto and Sasuke rushed at each other, signature attacks blazing in each of their hands for a final strike. Due to Sasuke's slightly taller size, his attack landed first, spearing Naruto in his right shoulder, slightly piercing the boy's lung. The immense jolt of pain was enough to cause the blonde to lose the concentration he'd used to maintain his balance on the damaged terrain, and he fell forward. The Rasengan, formerly aimed for the Uchiha's forehead protector, slammed directly into the traitorous youth's stomach, sending him flying backward straight into a wall. As Naruto stood there panting, every cell in his body screaming out in pain, he managed a foxy grin. "BG team." He smirked before promptly falling unconscious from pain and blood loss. Hatake Kakashi hopped through the tree surrounding the Valley of the End accompanied by his nin dog Pakken. As he approached the valley, his eyes instantly locked on the prone form of his fallen student, Sasuke Uchiha. The boy, his prodigy and his pride, was lying on the ground unconscious. Kakashi quickly went over to check on his injured student, before sighing in relief. None of his prodigy's wounds were too severe, multiple small wounds, a couple bruised and broken bones, and some minor head trauma, but no threats of brain damage or permanent disablement. With any luck and some proper medical treatment, his star student would be on his feet and training again in no time. "Kakashi!" shouted Pakken, who had rushed over to check on the injured Naruto. "Naruto's not in good condition, he's got a pierced lung and some other serious injuries. It looks like his healing ability just can't keep up with this level of damage. If we don't the kid to an emergency room, he'll be dead in a few hours." "Good," stated a cheery Kakashi, eye smiling at his faithful Niken. "Good?" shouted out a shocked Pakken. "Didn't you just hear me, Kakashi? If we don't get him to a hospital soon, your student will die." "Exactly," stated Kakashi, still eye smiling. Noting Pakken's shocked expression, he decided to explain while he lifted Sasuke off the ground. "Naruto's always been a failure of a ninja. Naruto's too loud and brash to ever accomplish anything of any importance, and he lacks the skills necessary to become anything higher than a Chunin. Sasuke, on the other hand, is a prodigy, the last survivor of the great Uchiha clan. With his skills, restoring the Uchiha clan and even becoming the first Uchiha Hokage are easily within his grasp. With Naruto's death, Sasuke will gain the Manjiki Sharingan, and thus grow even stronger. In death, Naruto will be able to do much more for Konoha than he could ever do in life," finished the gray-haired Jounin. "Kakashi, that's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. Besides, if the blonde's such a failure, how the hell he beat your precious prodigy here?" growled out the diminutive canine. "He probably caught poor Sasuke by surprise with some dirty demon trick," responded the one-eyed Jounin, shrugging his shoulders, making sure not to injure his precious cargo. "Just another reason he should die. I refuse to let that demon gain any more strength," stated Kakashi quietly to himself, though Pakken's sensitive ears caught it. With those final muttered, the gray-haired copy ninja leapt back toward Konoha, leaving his summon and his abandoned student behind. "That lying two-faced little bastard," growled out Pakken. "He just used that half-assed excuse to justify letting the pup die due to his prejudice." The small Niken then turned to Naruto. "Rest easy, pup, there's no way in hell I'm gonna let you die like this. You're too good a pup to let that happen," stated Pakken somberly, remembering the encounters he'd had with the pup during the Chunin exams and a few times thereafter on smaller missions. The kid was loyal to a fault, just like his own kind, and Niken would never let their own kind die. With those final thoughts, Pakken rolled back his head and let loose a loud howl, a howl too loud for a dog as small as him to release naturally. Seconds later, he and Naruto were surrounded by a large number of puffs of smoke. Surrounding the two was the remainder of Kakashi's Niken squad. Before any questions could be asked, Pakken spoke up. "No time to explain, boys. Naruto here's been severely injured and we have to get him back to Konoha before he croaks. I'll explain everything else on the way. Shiba, Urishi, help me get Naruto up on Bull's back. Everyone else, spread out and do a quick search to see if you can find something to help stop the kid from bleeding out," ordered the diminutive Niken, with the rest of his squad quickly following their diminutive leader's orders. It took the three members of the Niken squad only a few minutes to get the injured blonde onto Bull's back, and a few seconds later the remainder of the squad returned. One had brought an herb that, if chewed and applied to a wound, would instantly cause the blood in the surrounding area to clot, preventing further blood loss. Pakken immediately got the squad moving toward Konoha while remained atop Bull to apply the medical herb. After he was done, he began to tell the members of his squad exactly what Hatake had done, much to the numerous growls from the squad of Niken. The dog summons of the Niken contract were some of the most loyal summons one could find, and as a contract summons they required anyone who summoned them to share their strong sense of loyalty. To hear that their summoner had openly betrayed a fellow member of his pack, worse a pup under his own protection, was an affront to everything their clan stood for. Kakashi Hatake had just crossed the line, and now his summons were not happy about it. Urushi, a slim dog with shaggy beige fur, white marking, and traditional Japanese angry eyes, which were now narrowed in rage, was the first to voice his opinion. That rat! I swear once we get to Konoha I'm going to rip off the bastard's arms for this. He snarled out, revealing a set of very sharp teeth. You can have his arms, I intend to rip out his throat, growled out Shiba, a shaggy red-furred dog with a black crest and small eyes, not to mention a set of shark-like teeth. Urushi and Shiba were the primary combat dogs for the squad and as such were the most hot-blooded. We should tell the boss about this as soon as possible. Hataki's crossed the final line, stated Baisuk, a dull yellow-furred dog with dark circles surrounding his eyes and the kanji for shinobi marking his forehead, in his usual dreary tone, though the other dogs noted a hint of disappointment in the usually calm dog's monotone. I'm with Baisuk. Hataki's been on thin ice with the boss since he got his friend Obito killed. This news will really set her off, stated Ahei, a lean dog with short red and white fur, narrow eyes, and bandages wrapped around his head and shoulders. You're right, stated Pakin somberly. Baisuk, hey, I want you two to go and report to the boss about this. Tell her Hataki's finally gone too far on this one. We may have given him a second chance since his father was probably the greatest summoner we've ever had, but what he did to the pup is unforgivable. What do you suggest for his punishment, Pakin-san? Questioned Guruko, a small yellow dog with white markings and a pair pronounced fangs on the edge of his mouth. Complete banishment from our contract and those of any of our allies, growled out Pakin. This shocked a number of the Niken. Complete banishment meant that not only would the person banished be unable to use their contract, or any of the other clans that the Niken had allied with over the years, but any of their descendants would be automatically refused the right to summon as well. Not only that, but any summoner who had done something so disgusting or insulting to his summons to earn this level of punishment would likely find it nearly impossible to convince even an unallied summons clan to allow him the right. Basically, it meant that the person's entire line would lose the ability to properly sign summoning contracts. It was the most severe punishment the summons could pass on a summoner, reserved for only those who betrayed their summons on the highest level. Are you sure about that, Pakin-san? Stated Akino, another yellow-furred dog who wore a pair of sunglasses and a scarf around his neck. The Hatake clan has held our kind's summoning contract for generations. If any Hatake is forbidden from signing our scroll again, we'll need to find a new summoner, unless we want to risk leaving the summoning scroll out for Hatake to find and destroy in an attempt for revenge. I know it's extreme, but what Hatake did to the pup violated the very basis of our clan's laws. That merits the most severe punishment we have. As for a new summoner, I already have a good idea on someone who'd fit our needs perfectly, stated Pakin with a soft chuckle, as he looked backwards at the unconscious blonde riding behind him. The fox child? Asked Baisuk calmly, no insult meant, merely a question. Yup, stated the small pug. I've only met the kid a few times, but each and every time I have, he's been willing to risk his life to defend his home and his friends. That's the kind of loyalty that our kind requires of a summoner. Baisuk and Ohei both nodded their heads. If their leader was willing to vouch for the pup, then that's all the assurance they needed. We'll give the boss your message and suggestions, stated Ahei, before both he and Baisuk disappeared in twin puffs of smokes. I hope I'm right about you, pup, thought Pakin, or my tail's gonna be in some severe fire. The small Niken then let out a soft sigh before ordering his team to move double time. Konoha gates, a short time later. Standing at the gates of her village, Tsunade Senju was worried. Most of the Sasuke recovery team had made it back already and all of them were injured in some way or another. She had just finished operating on Chuji, who was suffering extreme chakra exhaustion and internal damage after using the Akimichi 3-colored food pills. The boy had been in a rough spot, but luckily she was able to stabilize him. Now all the boy would need was a little rest and he'd be fine. Niji had suffered a number of piercing wounds throughout his body, but the boy should recover in time. Kiba and Akamaru had also suffered a large number of physical injuries, mostly severe cuts and a few broken bones plus, and were also suffering from chakra exhaustion, but they'd both pull through after some recovery time. Shikamaru had suffered the least amount of injuries of the group, whether this was due to his tactical expertise or just sheer dumb luck she couldn't tell. The only problems with him were a slight case of chakra exhaustion, a broken finger, and a number of minor cuts and bruises. Finally, Rock Lee was suffering from several injuries from his fight with the bone-wielding Kagaya, not to mention a severe hangover, but he'd be fine with a little rest. Now the only remaining member missing was the person she'd come to view as a younger brother, or even as a son at times. Naruto Uzumaki. Surrounding her were several others. Standing by her side, as always, was her assistant Shizen, who seemed just as worried about the young blonde as she did. Tsunade knew that the younger woman cared for Naruto, though the exact nature of those feelings was unknown to her, but she guessed it was close to a sibling relationship. Nearby, the three Sand siblings also stood waiting for the blonde's return. Temari and Kankuro both seemed mildly nervous, but Gaara was the alarming. While the young redhead's face remained as stoically calm as ever, anyone with any experience reading people, which thanks to her years of experience gambling, despite her losses, Tsunade had in spades, could tell how nervous the young man was. It wasn't all that surprising really, considering all that Naruto had done for the younger Jinchuriki. Naruto had been the one to save the formerly psychotic redhead from his lonely existence by beating some sense into his head, both literally and metaphorically. Now Gaara considered Naruto both his personal savior and his closest friend. It was only natural for the redhead to worry for his safety. Standing nearby was Hinata Hyuga, a young kunoichi who Tsunade knew had a monster crush on Naruto. She'd seen herself on multiple occasions how the shy, soft-spoken Hyuga would get all nervous and twitchy whenever her little brother was around, even fainting dead straight if he got too close to her. The young Hyuga had seemed to have some serious self-esteem and confidence issues that needed to be worked out, but she had a lot of promise. Personally, Tsunade liked the girl and thought she and Naruto would be good for each other. The blonde's endless confidence and warm nature would help build the Hyuga girl's own confidence, while the soft-spoken Hyuga might actually be able to calm the overly energetic blonde. She was certainly a better option than Naruto's current crush. Speaking of that annoyance, Sakura Haruno was also among the group waiting for the blonde's return. However, unlike the rest of the group that was waiting for the blonde, she seemed more interested in her traitorous teammate than the loyal one who'd set out to retrieve him. She had once considered the girl a possible applicant for apprenticeship under her, but that thought had been thrown out the window a long time ago. The girl was arrogant, pushy, and had an overly inflated opinion of herself, not to mention her nearly complete lack of skills, besides nearly perfect chakra control. Still, that facet had made her an appealing applicant, considering the control requirements necessary for medical jutsu, not to mention her own super strength techniques. But since this entire debacle started and the girl kept ranting on about how Naruto Baka had better not hurt her Sasuke-kun, the elder blonde's opinion of the pink-haired girl kept falling lower and lower. The girl had practically begged Naruto to bring Sasuke back, and now she was ranting insults about the blonde. The only thing keeping the slug Sannin from turning the pinkette into paste was her overriding worry for her little brother. Suddenly a figure appeared in front of the group. Standing tall in front of them was Kakashi Hatake, and resting on his back was no other than Sasuke Uchiha. The masked ninja quickly spoke to the blonde Hokage. Hokage-sama, I brought back Sasuke, but I'm unsure about his current condition. I need you to take a look, lied the one-eyed Nin. He was quite certain about his student's condition, but needed a moment to catch his breath and prepare himself for the questions that would soon follow covering the demon brat. Tsunade nodded her head and did a quick diagnostic jutsu to examine the Uchiha's injuries. Nodding her head upon completion, she stated calmly, the Uchiha's fine, other than a few broken bones and some other minor injuries. The concussion he's got on the back of his head is pretty bad, but he should wake up in a week or so. She then noted the Jounin's solitary form. Kakashi, she breathed, her heart quivering at the possibilities. Where's Naruto? Kakashi hung his head in mock sorrow while doing his best to keep his voice and face a mask of empty emotions. I'm sorry to say, Tsunade-sama, but sadly Naruto Uzumaki didn't survive this mission, he stated in a voice filled with false sadness and sorrow. No, whispered the blonde Sannin as she felt her heart break. Around her, similar looks and voices filled the small crowd waiting for the blonde's return. Hinata and Shizen both looked close to breaking into tears, and Gaara and his siblings wore masks of pure shock and sorrow. The only one unconcerned was the pink-haired Haruno, who was too busy crooning over her injured Sasuke-kun to even notice. Sadly, it's true, stated the apparently grieving Hatake, doing his best to hide the smirk beneath his mask. I'm afraid that he took too many injuries in his attempt to bring Sasuke back unharmed. When I arrived, Sasuke was already unconscious and Naruto was on death's door. I held him as his heart stopped, and he whispered his final wish to me. Take Sasuke home, and make sure he's safe and happy. Those were his last words to me. Naruto was truly a ninja who understood the true meaning of loyalty, finished Kakashi with a suppressed sob, while inwardly he was smirking quite with more than a bit of pride at his deception. While Kakashi was primarily a combat nin, that didn't mean he lacked an ability to lie or deceive people. The story was perfect, just the right splash of details without being overly thought out. Even the blonde's false dying wish sounded perfectly like the blonde's overly caring nature. This story not only kept Kakashi's hands clean, but it would make sure the overly sentimental Hokage wouldn't take any actions against Sasuke for the younger blonde's death. She wouldn't dare go against her beloved little brother's dying wish if she could help it. Kakashi's moment of smug superiority was shattered a second after it began when a new voice spoke up. "That's the second biggest load of crap I've heard you say today, Hataki," shouted out a grizzled voice from behind the shocked Jounin, who instantly recognized the voice. Turning around slowly, not sure whether he wanted to see what was behind him, the silver-haired copy nin's eyes widened at the sight behind him. Tsunade's world had shattered. Her baby brother was dead, again. She'd lost yet another precious person. The elder Senju was so lost in her own grief that she barely heard the remainder of Kakashi's story. Only when the third voice had cut did she even bother to raise her head. Thinking it was some fool who dare mock her now dead brother's legacy, she prepared to turn the speaker into mincemeat, only to stop short at the sight she saw before her. Standing in the center of the road was a massive Niken, one she recognized as belonging to Kakashi's own squad. Sitting atop the dog's massive head was the undeniable speaker, a diminutive Niken she recognized as Pakken. Surrounding the massive Niken was 4 of the remaining 6 members of his Niken squad. Finally, lying right behind the diminutive Pakken and across Bull's massive back, unconscious but still breathing if the slow and sporadic rising and falling was any indicator, was one Naruto Uzumaki. Forgetting everything else for the moment, she ran straight for her little brother. As she approached the small Niken still perched on the giant's head, spoke up again, "Lady Tsunade, boy am I glad to see you. The pup's in bad shape," said the small dog, worried eyes focusing on the younger blonde shinobi. Tsunade went to work in an instant. With a little help from Shizen, who had followed right after her, the two removed the injured genin from his perch across the large dog's back and gently laid him flat across the ground. She did a quick diagnostic jutsu again, and the results were grim: a pierced lung, several broken bones, and severe blunt force damage and electrical burns to several of his internal organs. A normal person would have died instantly from this collection of injuries, but Naruto was no normal person. Kyuubi's chakra seemed to be doing its best to heal the boy, but with the severity of his injuries, all the fox's chakra seemed to be capable of doing was to keep the blonde breathing, and even then it was barely able to do that. Tsunade gritted her teeth. She'd just gotten her baby brother back from an apparent death, and she'd be damned 10 times over if she was going to lose him again. Barking out orders to Shizen, she got to work. Working in perfect tandem, the two did everything they could to heal the blonde. Luckily, the fox seemed to be enhancing their efforts considerably. Not only did the fox do its own work in healing the blonde's injuries once it no longer needed to focus keeping him alive, but its chakra also seemed to enhance their own healing jutsu. Tsunade was still shocked at the regenerative abilities the fox seemed to grant Naruto. The blonde was at death's door mere minutes ago, and now he was on the fast track to recovery. Normally it would have taken hours of work just to stabilize the blonde, followed by months of recovery time, but now their work was done in less than half an hour, and given the rate of healing combined with her own medical jutsu, the blonde would be back at full strength in a few days. Tsunade was soon shaken out of her contemplation by a chorus of growls and snarls and the pained scream of a one-eyed ninja. Kakashi Hatake was in shock. His own Niken had betrayed him, bringing the blonde demon brat back to Konoha. Thoughts ran through his head. With this new development, he was in considerable danger. His own story just a moment ago claimed that the blonde had died in his arms. Calming himself, the Jounin quickly formulated a plan. He could easily claim that he was mistaken about the blonde's death, stating that he wasn't a full medic like Tsunade. Granted, he'd probably be in a lot of trouble from Tsunade for nearly letting her brother die, but he'd survive it. Then all he'd have to do was kill the demon brat before he got a chance to recover and dispute his claim on the blonde's last words. All that would take would be a little effort and some good poison. The only problem was his traitorous Niken Pakken. If the dog told Tsunade what had happened, his goose was cooked. He needed to get close enough to Pakken to forcibly dispel the summons. Then he could resummon the dog in an area where they could work this out. Worst case scenario, he'd simply cancel the contract with the Niken, stating that he and Pakken had a major disagreement about what had happened and the dog had gotten the contract cancelled before he could explain what had happened. Plan set into his mind, the one-eyed Jounin started to move forward, only to be stopped halfway. As soon as he'd even approached the downed blonde with the small neem pug sitting by his side, the rest of his former squad launched into immediate action. The remaining Niken launched themselves at their former master, and each latched onto him and held him down, while the silver-haired ninja screamed in pain. Shiba and Yurushi, being 2 of the larger and stronger dogs of the pack, both latched onto an arm holding it down into the side, preventing the copy nin from using a single jutsu or attempting to dispel them. Kuruko and Akino, being smaller and with a lot less power, latched onto the man's ankles, gripping tightly and jerking, causing the man to fall to his knees. Lastly, Bull appeared behind the downed shinobi and bit deeply into the man's right shoulder while putting his massive weight to good use and pinning down the already injured Hatake. Turning around, Pakken growled at his former master before stating coldly, Do you honestly think we're going to let you get anywhere this pup after what you tried to do to him, Hataki? Pack and I started the silver-haired ninja before he cut off by a snarl from the diminutive Niken. Save it. Snarled out the pug. I've already sent to Hay and Baisuk to inform the boss about exactly what you did to that pup, and I've already gave her my recommendation for your punishment. Complete banishment from not only our contract, but from all of our allies as well. Kakashi's visible eye widened in shock. He knew full well what complete banishment would mean. Neither he nor any of his kin would ever be able to summon again. You can't do that! Shouted out the shocked ninja. I can and I did, and it's the least you deserve for betraying the pup like you did, growled out the enraged Niken. Excuse me? Stated the voice of the fifth Hokage, who'd observed their entire discussion, seemingly forgotten by the two. Kakashi did not like the eerie calm that now filled the Sanin's voice. It did not speak well for his chances of survival. Pakin, was it? She asked, smiling at the small Niken. Getting a nod from the small dog, she continued, given your reaction to his story, and the obvious proof of Naruto still being alive, when Kakashi told us now what was it? Oh yes, I felt his heart stop as I held him in my arms. Was that it, Kakashi? She slowly turned calm and cold eyes to the now sweating form of Hataki Kakashi. Before the ninja could speak up in his own defense, she returned her attention back to the small pug before her. I can only assume that Kakashi's story was fabricated in some way. Would you mind telling me what really happened? Pakin nodded his head, and launched into his explanation. He told them, nearly word for word, exactly what happened in his conversation with Kakashi in the Valley of the End, including Kakashi's little statement at the end. Following closely by his and his squad's actions to get the blonde safely back to Konoha. At the end, the pug asked if the young blonde would be alright. After getting a solid confirmation from the elder medic, he nodded to his squad and had them dispel, before telling the Hokage that he may have some things to discuss with the blonde when he woke up, and asked if she would mind sending one of her slugs to his clan's territory to alert them when the blonde regained consciousness. After getting an assurance that she'd do just that as soon as the Naruto regained consciousness, she bid the pug a fond farewell. After the dog dispersed in a cloud of smoke, she turned now baleful eyes onto the form of Kakashi Hataki, who was currently shaking in fear and looked ready to piss himself. So Hataki, any last words before I begin to turn your head into mush? She asked with an evil smirk while cracking her knuckles. Before the scared shitless ninja could even utter a squeak for mercy, a high-pitched and shrilly voice made itself known. Why should Kakashi-sensei be punished? Naruto Baka deserved to be left for dead after he tried to hurt Sasuke-kun. Shrieked out the pink-haired form of Sakura Haruno. She was currently standing over the downed Naruto with her leg held, seemingly preparing to kick her now revived teammate in the head for daring to hurt her Sasuke-kun. Tsunade's only thought was which would hit the pinkette first, her fist or Gaara's sand. Surprisingly, it was neither. Hinata Hyuga was having a really emotional day. First, her cousin had been admitted to the hospital nearly dead from numerous wounds inflicted while trying to bring back the traitorous Uchiha. She couldn't describe the fear or remorse in her stomach. She and her cousin had just started to get back to being close thanks to Naruto-kun. Then she'd felt unimaginable relief after finding out he'd recover. Then came new fear accompanied by a sense of dread and worry as she waited for Naruto-kun to return from trying to retrieve the traitor. Then came the heart-wrenching despair upon hearing that Naruto-kun had died from his sensei. But luckily those thoughts and feelings died in a moment after the Niken appeared carrying an injured but still breathing Naruto. Following the relief were flashes of the most extreme rage she'd ever felt as she listened to the tiny pug recount how Hataki had left Naruto-kun to die, for a half-assed excuse to help the Uchiha gain power. The sight of the pink-haired Haruno, the girl Naruto-kun always showed so much kindness and compassion to, the girl she'd killed to just be in her place, standing over the injured form of Naruto, ready to kick the injured boy for fulfilling his promise to her, did something that no one thought possible. It pissed the normally kind-hearted Hyuga off, big time. Hinata Hyuga snapped. Before the pink-haired fangirl could bring her kick to bear, Hinata Hyuga was in front of her. Hinata stood stark still in her Juken stance, her Byakugan flaring in rage, and a shocking amount of killer intent focused directly on the pinkette in front of her. Hinata-san, what the hell are you doing? Get out of my way! Shouted the pinkette, either ignoring or not noticing the killing intent that flared around the pale-eyed girl. I should be asking the same question, Haruno. Naruto just fulfilled his promise to you and now you're trying to hurt him even more. I asked Naruto Baka to bring Sasuke-kun back to me, not beat him up, shrieked the fangirl. The Baka couldn't do a single thing right. This is the one time I asked that idiot to help and he goes and fouls it up. That little dope is just her word were cut off by a palm strike directly to her stomach. How dare you? Each snarled word accompanied by another strike from the Lavender Hyuga. Naruto-kun has always risked his life for you. Always helped you whenever he could, and you have the nerve to say something like that. You ungrateful! With that final shouted insult, Hinata sent the girl flying with a double palm directly to her oversized forehead. Before the girl could move to strike again, a hand caught her shoulder. Turning, she saw the grinning face of the fifth Hokage staring down at her. Hinata gulped, realizing had she just done, she'd attacked another Konoha nin in front of the Hokage. That was ground for immediate and severe punishment. Wasn't she surprised when the Hokage patted her on the shoulder and said happily, "Couldn't have said it any better myself," she said, flashing the girl a warm grin. Tsunade wasn't a woman who normally liked surprises, but the actions of one Hinata Hyuga were certainly an exception to that rule. Maybe, I actually do have a good candidate for a second apprentice, she thought, happily remembering the scroll Kurenai had given her on the blue-haired Hyuga, stating her near-perfect control. After giving the girl another pat on the shoulder, she called, "Shizen, get Naruto-kun and Haruno-san to the hospital. I'll handle the Uchiha myself when I'm done with Hataki. Hinata-chan, would you mind helping her with Naruto? I think she might need an extra hand. I also want to see you in my office in a few days about a special offer I may have for you." Hinata nodded her head while blushing deeply, and went over to help Shizen with Naruto, with the Sand siblings following close behind to provide an escort. Once the two had left, Tsunade turned her attention back to the still cowering form of Kakashi Hataki. Her evil grin returning to full force, she stated sweetly, "Now where were we?" she asked while cracking her knuckles. For many hours later, the screams of pain of one Hataki Kakashi filled the streets of Konoha. After beating the bastard Hataki to her heart's content, she picked up both his and the Uchiha's unconscious bodies and left off to the secure medical center where these two would recover until it was time for both of them to face sentencing for treason. While she carried the two, Tsunade couldn't help but smile. Her brother was going to be fine, and she had a good prospect for a second apprentice. All was right in the world. The next day. "You want me to what?" shrieked out the slug Sannin turned Godame Hokage. The next day, Konoha Council Chambers. "You want me to what?" shrieked out the slug Sannin turned Godame Hokage. The volume of the blonde Sannin's shout alone was enough to make a certain pink-haired genin jealous. However, unlike the shrill sounds of the fangirl's shriek, Tsunade's enraged voice sounded more along the lines of a roar than an actual shriek. That, combined with her slamming her fists onto the table, nearly shattering it, and the amount of killing intent she was subconsciously releasing, was enough to send most of the civilian members of the council scurrying backward and the shinobi members reaching for their weapons. "It is the decision of the council that both Kakashi Hataki and Sasuke Uchiha will not be tried as traitors for their actions. It is also our decision that Naruto Uzumaki is to be banished from Konoha," stated the cold tone of the ancient warhawk known as Danzo Shimura, who was currently sitting on the opposite side of the table between his fellow members of the Elder Council, Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Yutane, her sensei's former teammates. "Explain yourselves," hissed the Hokage, glaring directly at the elders. "First of all, the Uchiha attempted to defect from Konoha to one of our greatest enemies, and you want to let him get off scotch-free? As for Hataki, he not only abandoned a severely injured comrade, a genin under his direct authority no less, to die, but lied to me about it," she growled out. "Please, you can't blame the boy when his actions were obviously not of his own control," stated Hamura calmly, the elderly man speaking with a crisp and calm decorum. "It's obvious from our reports that the curse mark that Orochimaru inflicted on the boy negatively influenced his personality. Our reports clearly show that the boy had been suffering from fits of aggressive and antisocial behavior since that man infected him. Combined with the mental trauma the Uchiha massacre and his brother's betrayal caused the boy, and his strong desire to avenge his clan, the boy was obviously not in his right mind. Steps are being taken to ensure that this doesn't happen again. We already have seal masters working on a way to permanently suppress the seal, and we have also placed a locator tag on the boy's leg to ensure any other attempts at kidnapping will be futile. As for young Kakashi," stated Koharu, "our interview with him showed that while the man did make a mistake, it wasn't one worthy of the crimes you're blaming him for. From Kakashi's rendition of the events, the man was quite certain that Naruto would die before he could get him back to Konoha, while he was uncertain about Sasuke's condition. Clearly the man believed that Naruto was beyond his ability to save, so he focused on saving the one student he thought he was capable of helping. As for lying to you, well, I can't really blame the poor boy. It is well known how close you and the young Uzumaki are. If he told you the exact truth, you'd have probably killed him then and there," stated the elderly woman, her voice filled with false sympathy. "What about the statement Pakken gave me? From that it's quite clear that Hataki's intentions in leaving behind Naruto were wholly malicious," snapped Tsunade. Snorted Koharu, "the word of one of our ninja far outweighs the word of a summons, and since there are no other witnesses or evidence, we can only trust in our shinobi. You needn't worry, Tsunade. Kakashi will still be punished for his breaches in conduct, but I don't believe the boy's poor choices should cost him his life, especially given the circumstances. Furthermore, Given your close relationship with the boy he abandoned, will be the ones to decide the punishment, since your closeness to the case would obviously impede your ability to make a fair and unbiased judgment. You're right, Tsunade mentally scoffed. From what I've read, those fits of aggressive and antisocial behavior have been going on since the Bratz clan was slaughtered, but you idiots have been ignoring or explaining it away just so you can have your precious Uchiha clan revived. As for Kakashi, you just want him to be able to keep teaching the little bastard. I also doubt any punishment you inflict on the man will even be noticeable. Hell, they probably want to reward him for almost getting rid of Naruto, mentally growled out the elder woman, but she knew that this wasn't the time or the place to argue about that, and quite frankly, she didn't much care what happened to the Uchiha or Hatake now. The only one she cared about right now was her little brother. And what about banishing Naruto? What the hell is the boy's crime? Growled out the blonde woman murderously. Naruto Uzumaki is charged and convicted of the assault and attempted murder of the clan heir of the Uchiha clan. A most serious crime, stated Danzo somberly, with a twisted smirk on his face, a smirk shared by the remainder of the Elder Council, the Civilian Council, and to Tsunade's surprise and anger, a large majority of the clan council. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, shouted out the blonde Hokage. Naruto and his team was assigned to retrieve Sasuke by any means necessary, and from what I've seen, Sasuke was the one least injured by their fight. Calm yourself, Tsunade-sama, stated Danzo coolly, his voice never losing its even tone. From what we've confirmed from the battle, it is clear the blonde used excessive force than necessary to bring back the young Uchiha. Under Konoha law, those actions against a fellow ninja, especially one not under his own power, constitutes charges of assault and attempted murder. And where the hell do you get the idea that Naruto used excessive force? Snarled out Tsunade. From Kakashi's report, of course, stated a smirking Danzo. Within it we find statements on the condition of the battlefield and the young Uchiha. That clearly shows the young Uzumaki clearly used greater force than necessary to capture young Sasuke. Along with those charges, there are the clear indicators the boy is succumbing to the demon held within him. The many instances of his use of its chakra is a clear enough sign of that. The boy needs to be removed from Konoha immediately for the village's safety, if nothing else. Tsunade was gripping the edge of the council table so hard that the two chunks in her hands suddenly cracked and snapped off. Throwing the hunks of wood, that were now barely more than handfuls of sawdust, to the side, she rounded her glare onto the clan council. I expected this kind of blatant favoritism and animosity from the civilians, but am I to take it that the clan council agrees with this as well? I thought that you people at least were capable of seeing past the damned fox. She growled angrily. For the most part the council cringed under their leader's glare, but Hayashi Hyuga decided to speak up. It is the near unanimous, the head of the Hyuga clan shot a glare at Shibi Aburame, that the boy is too dangerous to remain inside Konoha. The indicators of his use of Kyuubi's chakra in the confrontations with Zabuza Momochi, my nephew Niji, and then again in his battle with Sasuke are clear signs the seal is weakening. Given those facts, it is in the best interests of the village to see the boy removed. Tsunade ignored the Hyuga. She was sure that if she didn't, she'd likely pluck out the man's eyes with her own 2 fingers, and turned her attention to the Aburame clan head. I take it from Hayashi's reaction that you're the only one who voted against banishing Naruto, she stated calmly. That is correct, Hokage-sama, stated the Aburame head calmly. My clan knows full well what it is like to be disliked and persecuted for something that we hold within ourselves, he stated solemnly. Bah! Came the shrieking voice of Tamara Haruno, the head of the Haruno clan and head of the civilian council. It's just like you bug freaks to sympathize with that demon brat. If I had my way, the little monster would have been drowned as soon as it was born. Her rant was halted by a kunai, courtesy of Tsunade, whizzing past her cheek and leaving a deep gash. I'll remind the council that my predecessor and teacher's law is still in place, and I will personally enforce it on the next person stupid enough to break it in my presence, stated Tsunade coldly, getting many frightened stares from the entire council. Calm yourself, Tsunade, growled out Danzo. We are attempting to be merciful to the boy. Normally the punishment for the crimes the boy has committed is death by forced seppuku, but considering your relationship with the boy, and his numerous actions for the good of the leaf, we are only banishing him. And if I refuse to acknowledge the council's decision? Returned the blonde Kage. Then we will be forced to take this directly to the fire daimyo, and have him punish the boy to the full extent of the law. It is your decision, Tsunade, either agree to banish the boy or risk him being forced to kill himself as punishment. Naturally, we won't force you to make a decision so suddenly. We'll give you until the boy's banishment is due to make your decision. If he has not left by then, we will be forced to take the matter to the daimyo. And when exactly is the banishment to be enforced? Asked Tsunade in a dangerously calm voice. The boy will have 3 days after he is fully recovered from his injuries to set his affair in order before his banishment is enforced, stated Koharu, When is the boy due to be fully recovered? Tsunade thought for a moment. Given his healing abilities, Naruto should regain consciousness within the next day or so, and be fully recovered within a week of that. She lied calmly. In all honesty, the blonde would probably be fully recovered in 2 days, but she needed the extra time to plan. Very well, we'll trust your judgment on the boy's recovery, stated Hamura calmly. Will you be the one to deliver the message to the boy? She asked. Yes, growled out the slug Sannin. She wouldn't trust any of these fools to deliver the news honestly to Naruto. Good. Then this meeting is over, stated Danzo with a final victorious smirk. An hour later, Hokage's office. The enraged roar of a pissed Sannin split the night as a chair suddenly flew out the topmost window of the Hokage's tower. The chair was quickly followed by several other pieces of furniture, and one unfortunate Chunin who had chosen that time to deliver a report. Within the office connected to that window, a red-faced Tsunade stomped about in a state of utter and complete rage, ignoring the screams of the free-falling Chunin. Those bastards! Those chauvinistic, idiotic, pig-headed bastards! How dare they do this to him? After everything Naruto's done for this village, they just up and order me to banish him, or they'll have him executed. She finished with a dark growl. Surely there's something we can do, Shursho? I mean, with the flimsy evidence they have, they can't honestly convince the Fire Daimyo to support their claims, right? Asked a worried Shizen. Her master had explained everything to her before she went on her rampage, and now the young dark-haired woman was worried sick. It's not that simple, Shizen. First, the Fire Daimyo is a politician first and foremost. If he sees the entire council standing against one boy, then he may decide to side with them despite the evidence, and that's not mentioning any political tricks, favors, or sway Danzo or his cronies have up their sleeves. Then there's the implied threat Danzo and the rest of those toads in the council made when they gave me the offer. She growled. Implied threat? Asked Shizen cautiously. When they offered me the chance to decide whether or not I agreed to Naruto's sentence, they were issuing a challenge and a threat. To translate, it said, either agree with us now and banish the boy, or the next time the boy even steps slightly out of line, we'll do everything in our power to see him dead. Basically, they're saying that this is my only chance to let Naruto live, and if I don't do as they say, they'll pull out every dirty trick, plot, and plan they've got to see the Gaki executed at the slightest convenience. Explained a grim Tsunade before sighing and continuing. I'm also pretty sure that even if I do agree to banish him, they'll constantly threaten to have him marked as a missing nin in the bingo books if I don't become their cooperative little puppet. Oh dear. Stated a shocked Shizen, realizing what that meant, and it was a pretty bad situation for Naruto. If Tsunade agrees, then he'd be banished from his home for the rest of his life, but if she refused, then Naruto would be under a never-ending cloud of political scrutiny and danger. Either decision would also benefit the council. If she agrees, they'll have a constant threat against her to try and control her, and if she refuses, they'll constantly bombard her with threats to the younger blonde, making her unable to prevent any other plots without risking the blonde's life. It was pretty much a lose-lose situation for both the blondes, and a win-win for the council. If she didn't hate the council's guts at the moment, Shizen would have been impressed. It was political maneuvering at its finest. Instead, she asked, "What are we going to do?" I don't know, Shizen, I just don't know, stated a depressed Tsunade. She looked out her now shattered window and thought to herself. Grandfather, uncle, is this truly the village you fought so hard to found? A village of corrupt and bigoted fools who can't see past the bloody fox and their own pain to see the kind and gentle person they're seeking to destroy in every way possible? The only reason I'm even in this village is because I believed in Naruto. He's the only reason I came back and took this job, and the only reason I'm still here. That's it, mentally concluded Tsunade, as a serious and slightly evil smirk cemented on her features. Looking back toward Shizen, she barked out, "Shizen!" awakening the younger woman from her own depressed thoughts. High, stated the surprised medic. What was the main reason I returned to Konoha in the first place? She asked seriously. It was because of Naruto-kun, Shursho, responded her first apprentice, who was slightly confused by her master's questions. And who was the one who convinced me to take this job in the first place? Continued the blonde. Naruto, answered the still confused Shizen. And who or what is the only reason I'm still in this village? Asked the Sannin as her smirk grew. Again, that would be narrow realization suddenly dawned on the black-haired apprentice. You don't mean? Yes, I do, Shizen, stated a serious Tsunade. That Gaki is the only reason I'm in this godforsaken hole in the ground. It's no longer the place my grandfather and uncle dreamed of. The tree they worked so hard to plant has rotted all the way down to its roots. The only reason I came back here is because I thought Naruto could save this place from itself, but since that's no longer possible, I don't really see any point in staying. Besides, if those bastards think I'm going to just sit down and follow their orders while they banish one of the few people left in this world I care about, they've seriously underestimated me. I'm the Hokage for a reason, not to mention a senju and a woman besides that. I think it's about time the council learns why it's supremely stupid to mess with one of those, and suicide to mess with all three at once. She finished with a fierce growl. Shizen nodded her head. Where do we start? Tsunade took a moment to look at her first apprentice. Shizen, she said solemnly, you know you don't have to go along with this. I know how much you've wanted to settle down, start a family. I won't force you to. She was interrupted by Shizen hand coming up to halt her speech. The younger woman looked warmly at her master and friend. Tsunade, she stated warmly, you are my family, and Naruto-kun has become very precious to me as well. Any place I stay without you two would never be home for me. If you're going, then I am as well. Finished the younger woman in a serious tone. Tsunade took a moment to look at her first apprentice and longtime friend, and smiled. Glad to hear it. She stated warmly before switching into full commander mode, now get a pot of tea brewing and make it strong. If we're leaving, I'm going to make this entire village sorry for everything they've done to Naruto. We'll also need supplies, money, and a way to keep those idiots in council from declaring us missing Nin. I've also got an idea or two for a couple of extra hands we can bring along. Yes, sir, stated Shizen with a quick military salute, before setting to work on the tea. Also send out 2 messengers. Send the first to the Hyuga estate with a message to Hinata to have her come to my office first thing in the morning for a meeting about the offer I asked her about. The other one goes to Jiraiya. Have them tell the old pervert that if he isn't in my office by noon tomorrow, I'll outlaw all hot springs in Konoha. Have every single one of those perverted books he's written collected and burned in a public bonfire in the town square while he's tied to a stake and forced to watch, and then castrate him, heal him, and castrate him again. That ought to make sure the pervert's here on time. Hi, called out Shizen as she finished starting the tea before heading out to alert the needed messengers. While Shizen left, Tsunade got to work on the first paperwork she'd ever been excited about doing in years. I'm going to teach those council idiots what it means to piss off a woman, especially Tsunade of the Sannin. As the old saying goes, hell has no wrath like a woman's scorn. By the time I'm done, hell will seem like a paradise compared to this place. Meanwhile, Konoha Hospital, specially secured room. Naruto Uzumaki was lying on his bed, still unconscious from his injuries. His room was well secured and guarded around the clock by at least a pair of Umbu who the Hokage trusted completely, shinobi she knew were both completely loyal to her or the office of Hokage itself, and held no grudge against the younger blonde. They were instructed to allow no one in to see the boy without first reporting it to Shizen or the Hokage herself, which included all medical staff. Resting on the foot of the bed was Shizen's pet pig Taunton. The little pig may be pampered, but she was still a ninja pig and had a nose better than some Niken. She was the blonde's early warning device. If anyone came too close to the blonde that Taunton didn't recognize or even thought was acting suspicious, the little pig would set off a small seal in her collar that would instantly draw Tsunade and Shizen's attention to the room, as well as alert the Umbu standing guard. With all the security, Naruto could rest and recover easily without the threat of any ninja or civilian attempting to get into his room and finish what Kakashi and Sasuke had started. The 2 Umbu stationed to guard the boy had thought that the Hokage was being a bit extreme about the threat the boy was suffering from, but they soon stood corrected. It had barely been a full day and the 2 had already stopped 2 doctors and a nurse from coming in to give the blonde a sanctioned medical shot, which both discovered contained powerful poisons, and a single jounin from sneaking in through a window, thanks to Taunton's early warning, with a kunai ready to murder the blonde. Needless to say, both had since increased their active surveillance of the area, and when their shift ended, both would be sure to warn their replacements about the level of animosity the boy would face. While his protector stood guard over his immobile body, Naruto's mind was very much active. Naruto's mindscape. Standing before the massive cage doors that signified the Kyuubi's prison, was the annoyed form of our blonde hero. What the hell do you want, Fox? Asked the irate blonde. Actually, Kit, I brought you here to strike a bargain, stated the surprisingly calm voice of the monstrous Kyuubi no Kitsune. Why the hell should I listen to anything you say, you damned fox? You probably just want me to remove the seals so you can finish destroying Konoha, accused the blonde. A tick mark suddenly developed above the massive eyes that indicated the fox's presence. Now listen here, you pathetic little Niken, growled out the fox demon. If it wasn't for me working my ass off to keep you alive and the actions of a few of the mortals who actually care about you, you'd be dead thanks to your so-called brother's actions, your teacher's prejudice, and that pink-haired fangirl you call a friend nearly kicking your head in. What the hell are you talking about? Sasuke wouldn't really try to kill me, and what the hell are you saying about Kakashi-sensei and Sakura-chan? Asked the annoyed and confused blonde. The fox let out a heavy sigh, before replying, I know you're not going to like this, Kit, but you need to know who to trust. First, the wounds the Uchiha inflicted on you were all designed to kill you. The little brat was aiming to see you dead from the very beginning. As for your sensei and the pink-haired one, well, I think you'd better see for yourself. With that, the fox showed the blonde exactly what had happened since the battle in the Valley of the End, from Kakashi's betrayal, to Sakura's attempt to harm him, to Hinata standing up for him. One may ask how the fox had viewed all this, but the fox was deeply connected to all the blonde's senses, even when he was unconscious, and the fox could witness everything that occurred around the boy, even with his eyes closed. Needless to say, the blonde's world was shattered. 3 of the people he had come to view as precious had betrayed and tried to kill him. This can't be true. You are lying, cried out the blonde desperately, though he somehow knew the great demon wasn't. Sorry to say, Kit, but I'm not. If you can't believe me, just confirm it with the blonde Hokage of yours when you awaken, stated the fox solemnly. With those words, those undeniable words, Naruto slumped to his knees and tears began to fall from his eyes. I guess it's true, no one really cares about me, sobbed out the broken-hearted blonde. I wouldn't say that, Kit, stated the fox comfortingly. After all, that large-chested blonde looked ready to murder that Hatake fool when she found out what he did. And let's not forget the purple-haired Hyuga girl who stood up to defend you when that howler monkey attempted to attack you. I'd say you've got at least 2 people who care a lot about you there. The blonde sniffled a little as he called the memories Kyuubi had shown him, and the fox was right. Tsunade and Hinata both seemed to really care for him. Thanks, Kyuubi, I appreciate it, he whispered before a small grin appeared on his face. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna remove the seal. A large toothy, or Fong as the case may be, grin appeared below those massive eyes, and the fox responded, Wouldn't want you to, Kit, considering that ripping off that seal would likely kill us both. Though I may be immortal and not even the Shinigami seal is able to truly kill me, it would still be an incredibly painful experience that would leave me a lot weaker for a long time. Something I'd like to avoid for as long as possible. Nope, we're stuck with each other until death do us part, stated the grinning fox demon. Naruto smirked, Great, I'm pretty much married to giant demonic fuzzball. Ain't that the story of my life? He finished with an exaggerated sigh, getting a barking laugh from the fox demon. I'm not too happy about it either, Kit. Personally, I'd rather be stuck with the big-chested blonde Hokage of yours, at least then I'd have something fun to look at, stated the fox with a perverted giggle, causing the blonde to sweat drop. Great, I've got the demonic version of Erosan sealed in my gut, he stated while facepalming his head, before looking up at the ceiling and asking, Am I doomed to be surrounded by perverts for the rest of my life? He asked. Afraid so, Kit, smirked the fox. Both demon and vessel shared a laugh before Naruto got a confused expression on his face. Hey Kyuubi, he asked, why are you suddenly being so nice to me? When we met in the Chunin exams you were pretty much ready to bite my head off and devour me. What's with the sudden attitude shift? The fox looked down on the young blonde with a calm expression, well as calm as an expression as a giant pair of red fox eyes could get, and spoke, When we first met, Kit, I had just been woken up from my long slumber by you traipsing in and ordering me to give you my power, which naturally got me a little pissed, but after being up for a little while I started to watch what you did with the power I granted you. I have to admit you did something pretty rare, you impressed me. Most of my former containers have used my power to further their own goals, but you only used my power when there was something you wanted to protect. You never relied on it, only using it when you had no other options. Then I decided to sift through your memories, and saw what your life has been like. Despite everything you've been through because of this village, all the years of loneliness and hate you've experienced, you never went down the path of anger and hatred. For a mortal to show that much resolve and strength of will is something truly impressive. To put it simply, Kit, you've earned my respect, and that's something only a very small list of mortals can claim to have done, 2 of which were your first and 4th Hokages. Come to think of it, you actually remind me a bit of the old woodhead and the blonde-haired speedster, finished the fox with a smug expression. The blonde was flabbergasted. He'd earned the respect of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the greatest of the tailed demon lords, and even reminded the fox of both the 1st and 4th Hokages. Thanks, he muttered, not really sure how to respond to the praise. That was a lot of compliments for a kid who barely received any at all. Then again, considering how his supposed sensei seemed to be just another bigoted idiot, that wasn't much of a surprise. Remembering what had started the conversation, you mentioned something about a bargain? The fox's grin returned full force. Glad you remembered that. Maybe you're not as stupid as everyone thinks. Hey! It isn't my fault that those baka instructors at the academy wouldn't teach me anything. All they did was yell at me and send me out of the class at every opportunity. It wasn't until Iruka-sensei started teaching us that anyone bothered to try and teach me anything, stated the annoyed blonde. Relax, Kit, I know, stated the fox calmly. We'll have to work on that once you're back on your feet, but that can wait for later. Right now, what I'm offering you is a bloodline, stated the smirking demon. A bloodline, shouted the shocked blonde. He remembered what Kakashi-sensei no Hataki team had told him about bloodlines. They were a rare and powerful gift that only members of certain clans could use. How can you grant me one of those? Asked a confused and excited blonde. Well, right now, due to the lengths I went to keep you alive after the Uchiha whelp ran a Chidori through your lung, your body is pretty much saturated with my chakra. All I have to do is channel more of it, and then immerse it into your DNA to alter it, granting you a bloodline, explained the fox. Oh, said the blonde flatly, not understanding everything the fox had just told him, but deciding to go with it, until another question popped into his head. What do you get out of this, QB? Excuse me? Asked the surprised fox. Well, you said this was a bargain, right? And a bargain usually has someone giving something to someone else in exchange for some other thing or favor, stated the blonde confusingly, as if having trouble putting his thoughts into words. The fox openly stared at the blonde for a moment before it started to laugh again. You know, Kit, you might actually have a brain inside that slab of concrete you call a skull, laughed the demon. Hey! Shouted the insulted blonde. Relax, Kit, all fun aside. Yes, there is something I'd like you to do for me. I want you to hunt down that snake bastard Orochimaru and another person when you become strong enough and rip him into bite-sized bits, growled out the fox. What's with the serious grudge you've got for Orochi team and this other guy? Asked the blonde. They're the reasons you and I are stuck like this, growled out the fox. Seeing his vessel's confused expression, the fox explained, Have you ever wondered why I attacked Konoha in the first place? I never really thought about it, answered the blonde honestly. Well, it all started about 14 years ago. Despite what most Nikken believe, we Biju are not an entirely evil race of demons. Most of us just want to be left to our own devices. I'll gladly admit I'm a hot-headed and violent being, but I don't rampage unless someone pisses me off. I'm no pacifist, mind you. In fact, there are few things I love more than a good fight, but I don't like mindless slaughter. I'm usually content with just lying around and enjoying the peace and quiet of my den, and occasionally getting into a fight with some being that's actually worth the effort. That's where those two come in. I was in my den simply enjoying a nice nap when those two came in. That snake freak bit me in the neck and injected me with some sort of poison that weakened my mind and made me more susceptible to genjutsu. Then the other one, a man with a single, unusual Sharingan, placed a powerful genjutsu on me, throwing me into a berserk fury and sending me straight to your village. Now there's a lot of things I don't like in this world, and right near the top of that list is being used. That's why I want your help in seeing those two pay. Finished the fox with an audible snarl. I see, stated Naruto with more than a little anger lacing his voice. Considering it's their fault my life has been so royally screwed up, I don't think I'll mind taking care of them. But who's this second guy? The one with the weird Sharingan? Asked the blonde. I don't know for sure, Kit. His scent seemed so familiar, but I just couldn't place it. But somehow I know that we'll meet him again in the future, just like we met Orochimaru, answered the fox. We can worry about finding him after we deal with the Hibi team, stated Naruto, before an excited look appeared in his eyes. Now what exactly will my bloodline be able to do? Asked the blonde boy. Hey. Eager aren't we, Kit? Stated the amused fox. Well, your bloodline. Your bloodline is mostly a dojutsu, plus a few other tricks, stated the grinning fox demon. A dojutsu, like the Sharingan or the Byakugan? What does it do? What's it called? Asked the excited blonde. Settle down, Kit. First I've named it the Yokugan, Demon Fox Eyes, and it has 9 special properties, 1 for each of my tails, stated the fox with no small amount of pride. Now it has the basic abilities of most dojutsu, enhanced sight, the ability to see chakra, and an increased resistance to genjutsu. In addition to those abilities, you'll be able to track and follow movements in a similar manner as the Sharingan your team of a teacher and teammate possess can. You can switch your eyes to see on the infrared spectrum. Infra what spectwo? Interrupted the confused blonde. Sigh, that's infrared spectrum, Kit, answered the fox. Basically it means you can see things based on heat instead of light. There's a lot of complicated science involved that I'll explain later, but basically it means you'll be able to see through walls and disguises as well as having perfect vision in otherwise lightless conditions. You can also cast a number of special genjutsu called Kitsune no Meiho, fox magic, and you can combine fire and lightning chakra, which I've given you strong affinities for at no extra cost, to create a new sub-element called Kitsune by Fox Fire. I've already developed some special techniques for both, and I'll teach those to you later. Finally, I've ingrained your healing factor into it as well. As the fox finished his little speech, he looked down at his container to find him drooling with a very distant look in his eyes. Kit? Kit! Snap out of it already! Shouted the fox. Huh! Mumbled the blonde as he came out of his bloodline-fueled daydreams. Shaking his head to clear the cobwebs, the blonde thought for a moment before, Hey! That's only 8, I thought you said I'd get 9? Shouted the blonde. Glad to see you're able to count, Kit. Deadpanned the fox. I know it's only 8, because I'm letting you decide what the 9th ability is. Seeing the blonde about to open his mouth again, the fox spoke up again, and before you so much as think it. It can have anything to do with finding, creating, detecting, or anything else involving ramen. Naruto developed a slightly disappointed look at this statement, causing the fox to sweat drop, before developing a more thoughtful one. Kami, does this Kit think with only his stomach? Thought the fox. After a few moments of thought, the blonde came to a decision. Alright, I want to be completely immune to the powers and effects of the Sharingan, stated the blonde. The fox actually raised one fuzzy brow at this decision. Any reasons for that decision, Kit? In truth, it was a pretty good decision, and one the fox could easily accomplish. After all, he knew the Sharingan front, back, and sideways. One of the benefits of being the creator of a bloodline is that you tend to know everything about it. Well, first there's that Itachi guy who's chasing me. He's supposed to be a master at wielding the Sharingan, so being immune to it would definitely help me. Then there's both Sasuke team and Hitaki team. They're both experts at wielding the Sharingan, and both of them have tried to kill me in just the past few days. Kind of makes me think that anyone who has the Sharingan is going to hate me and want to kill me on principle. If that actually happens, I'd like to have something to give me an edge. Finally, there's the fact that I've never really liked how the Sharingan could steal a person's jutsu, especially after all the hard work it takes to just learn a new one. It took me weeks to learn the Rasengan, and hours of hard work to learn Kage Bunshin. It just rubs me the wrong way that Sasuke team or anyone else can steal them from me just by watching me use them, answered the blonde. The fox was pleasantly surprised. The Kit actually had some pretty good reasoning behind his decision. Sure, the whole, I think everyone with the Sharingan has a grudge against me was a little far-fetched, but given the blonde's recent experiences, the fox couldn't fault the Kit's logic. Alright, Kit, 1 immunity to the Sharingan, and everything it entails coming up. After I'm finished embedding your bloodline into your DNA, you'll wake up. After that, I think you'd better tell your large-breasted friend about your new abilities. Gotcha, Fox, and could you please stop referring to Bachan like that? It's kind of creepy, responded the blonde. No way, Kit, I don't get anything else to enjoy in here, at least not until you actually get some, so I'm ogling for all I'm worth, answered the fox with a perverted giggle as his cage bars began to glow. Arokitsun, deadpanned the blonde as he felt his mind drift back into unconsciousness. The next morning, Hokage's office. Tsunade sat behind her desk, a proud smirk spread across her face. Sitting in front of her was a small stack of papers, formal decrees all bearing her signature and stamp. It had taken her the better part of the night to figure out the exact wording needed so she wouldn't leave any holes in their escape plan. The top ones read: I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage and Namakuji, Slug, Sannin, hereby name Naruto Uzumaki as my second apprentice. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, hereby promote Naruto Uzumaki to the rank of Chunin under my authority. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, hereby release Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade Senju, and Shizen from all duties, responsibilities, and form of binding agreement to Konoha, or the nation of Hai no Kuni in general. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, hereby pardon Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade Senju, and Shizen of all crimes against Konoha or the Fire Nation, past, present, or future, as long as I hold authority as Hokage. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, do hereby name Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin my successor for the title of Hokage, if I retire, die, or am deemed as unfit for the position and a new Hokage is required. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, do hereby release the following items from the Hokage's personal vault, the Umbu storehouse, and the village storehouse into my own care until such as a time as either I or their current possessor deems fit to return them: the Forbidden Scroll of Seals, the third Hokage's monkey summoning contract, the Hokage's personal library of jutsu. The large list filled up nearly the entire large scroll. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, do hereby freely release Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade Senju, and Shizen from their ranks and responsibilities as Konoha shinobi, while allowing them to retain any ranks and or titles associated with their positions. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, do hereby ban the use of any seals on Konoha shinobi or civilian that are designed to hinder, harm, punish, and or control said shinobi. Any information on any such seals in current use by any clan or individual must be turned into the Hokage as soon as knowledge of this act is put into effect, or the individuals involved will be tried for treason and executed. Any such seals currently in effect are to be removed as soon as this law comes into effect. Any such seals that are currently in effect and lack a removal procedure are to be studied and analyzed by the current Hokage and any seal masters under his employ to find a way to remove them. Any use or activation of such seals while they are still in effect after this decree comes into effect is to be treated as a capital offense of either attempted murder or actual murder depending on the circumstances of the use, and the user will be punished to the full extent of the law. Financial restitutions of 1 million ryo will be paid each shinobi, and 500,000 to each civilian, to those who have had these seals placed on them in the past. The amounts will be paid for by the body or bodies in charge of placing said seals onto said victims. Tsunade couldn't help but smile at her most recent decree. She'd created it for two reasons. One was because Naruto had made a promise to Niji about ensuring that wretched caged bird seal was removed, and she was not about to make her baby brother a liar. Two was to stir up some chaos with the Hyuga clan. If her first meeting turns out the way she hoped, then Hiashi would be royally pissed when he found out, and decree or no decree, he'd send out people to track them down. Hopefully her little decree will keep Hiashi off her and her little group's back. Sitting next to the stack of signed decrees was a smaller stack waiting for her signature. These were ready to go, but would have to wait until after her meeting with a certain shy young Hyuga. Hearing someone enter her office, the elder blonde looked up and grinned at her first apprentice. "Shizen, have you finished applying the seals I gave you?" she asked. "Yes, my lady," answered Shizen. "I applied them to the mission distribution and storage rack just as you instructed, and told the Chunin on duty there it was simply an upgrade for the security seals involved. I've also tested it thoroughly." "And?" questioned Tsunade. She may not be a seal master on Jiraiya's level, but she took pride in her ability to create new seals. "It worked perfectly, Shursho," answered Shizen, holding up a large scroll. "This receiver scroll now shows us a complete list of all current missions in the rack along with all relevant mission details, and all we need to do is channel some chakra into the correct section, and we can summon any mission we choose from the rack. I tested it out on a couple of D ranks assigned by some council members and it worked perfectly." "Glad to hear it," stated the Hokage. Those seals would allow her and her team access to missions to both help improve their skills, make political allies, and earn a little cash on the side, all right from under Konoha's nose. "Speaking of cash, what is the current holdings of Konohagear's treasury at the moment?" she asked suddenly. Shizen fished around a small pile of document before finding the one she needed and answered, "The treasury currently contains 952,682,522 ryo." Tsunade began to rub her hands together greedily before stating, "I do believe Konoha owes me, you, and Naruto a hefty retirement package. Wouldn't you agree, Shizen?" asked the Godame. "Oh, absolutely, Hokage-sama," answered Shizen with a slightly evil grin. Shizen may be one of to keep Tsunade in line, but even she had her faults. One of which was a significantly greedy nature when it came to money matters. In her defense, it was probably developed as a defensive measure to prevent Tsunade from gambling away every penny they have earned. "Excellent. Please fill out the paperwork to have 500 million released into the Hokage's care. Listed under Black Ops or some other necessary and secretive function," ordered the Hokage. "At once, Shursho," stated Shizen, before she remembered something. "Before I go, Hinata just arrived, and she's waiting outside." "Good, send her in on your way out," answered the slug Sannin. After giving her master and longtime friend a final bow, the young woman left the room, and a few moments later, young Hinata Hyuga stepped in. The young girl seemed to be more than a little nervous at being called to her office, and it showed when the girl meekly spoke up. "Why you wish to see me, Hokage-sama?" she asked without raising her head. "Yes, Hinata, I did. Please take a seat," she said, indicating the chair resting in front of her desk. After the young heiress was fully seated, Tsunade spoke up again. "Now, Hinata, I'm not going to beat around the bush on this. The council, in their infinite wisdom, have decided to banish Naruto from Konoha. I expect them to make a formal announcement sometime in the next day or two," she stated bluntly, not letting any emotion show on her face. What? But why?" asked the young Hyuga, tears already forming in her light lavender eyes. "The official reason they're giving is because Naruto used excessive force in bringing back the Uchiha," answered the Hokage. That's ridiculous. And Naruto-kun was more severely injured than the Uchiha," Hinata responded. "Those were my words exactly. Now I have some things I need to ask you, and if your answers are what I think they are, then I have an offer you may like." "Interested?" asked the Hokage. Hinata stared at the elder blonde for a moment before slowly nodding her head. Good, now first question. Do you like Naruto, and I mean really like him, as in more than a friend? Blushing like a tomato, the young Hyuga began to hyperventilate before she calmed down and slowly nodded her head, still blushing heavily. If you had the chance, would you go with him, even if it meant leaving your family and friends behind? Continued the Hokage. This question caused Hinata to stop for a moment. She thought of her family and her friend. Family? What family? She questioned herself. Most of them hate me for either being too weak or for just being a member of the main house. The only ones there who even remotely care about me now are Niji and maybe Hanabi, and my relationship with both of them is limited. Father would probably be glad to see me gone so he could name Hanabi as the new clan heir. As for friends, the only people I'm really close with are Shino, Kiba, and Kurenai-sensei. Shino's too logical to really miss me much, and he'd understand, and Kiba's always been too forceful about trying to be in a relationship with me despite my constant refusals. Kurenai-sensei's been like a mother to me, but I'm sure she'd understand. She supported my relationship with Naruto all this time. Taking a deep breath as her train of thought concluded, the young Hyuga heiress nodded her head yet again, though this time with a little more resolve than before. Grinning widely, Tsunade spoke to the girl. Good, that's just the answer I was looking for. Now here's the offer. How'd you like to become my third apprentice? This question caught Hinata off guard. Excuse me, but why would you want someone else like me? Well, from what I've read, you have excellent chakra control, something that every good medic needs, and a lot of potential from what I've seen in your records. Second, you've got an attitude that I like, if we can break you of that nervousness. Finally, you care a lot about that little Gaki who I've named my second apprentice. Why you've named and Naruto-kun your second apprentice? Asked a confused Hinata. That's right, Hinata-chan, and as you know, where an apprentice isn't welcome, neither is their master, and since Konoha is now banishing my second apprentice, well, you see where that train of thought leads. Explained Tsunade as an evil grin spread across her face. As realization of what Tsunade was talking about dawned on Hinata, a dozen thoughts surged through her mind. She's planning on leaving Konoha with Naruto, and she's inviting me to come with them. I'd get to travel with Naruto-kun, learn under one of the greatest shinobi of our time, and spend lots of time with Naruto-kun. I could finally get a chance. I'd have to leave Konoha, but I'd get to stay with Naruto-kun. As her thoughts settled, a small smile spread across the girl's lips. Where do I sign Tsunade Shirsho? Tsunade smiled as she handed the young girl a set of papers that would make everything official. While the young girl filled out the needed paperwork, Tsunade turned her attention to the small pile of papers she'd left and signed. Grabbing the top sheet, she began to sign and stamp each one. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage and Namakuji Sanin, hereby name Hinata Hyuga as my third apprentice. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, hereby promote Hinata Hyuga to the rank of Chunin under my authority. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, hereby release Hinata Hyuga from all duties, responsibilities, and form of binding agreement to Konoha, or the nation of Hai no Kuni in general. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, hereby pardon Hinata Hyuga of all crimes against Konoha or the Fire Nation, past, present, or future, as long as I hold authority as Hokage. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, do hereby freely release Hinata Hyuga from her rank and responsibilities as a Konoha shinobi, while allowing her to retain any ranks and or titles associated with her position. I, Tsunade Senju, Godame Hokage, do hereby emancipate Hinata Hyuga from the Hyuga clan under my authority and place Tsunade Senju as the girl's primary legal guardian. Stamping the final command with the Hokage's official seal, Tsunade looked up to find her newest apprentice had finished signing the last document. Giving the girl a warm grin, well, now that that's done, Hinata Hyuga, you are now officially my third apprentice. Welcome aboard. She finished with a warm grin, which the shy girl softly returned. Thank you, Tsunade Shosho. I'll do my best not to disappoint you, responded the girl meekly. We're seriously going to have to work on those self-esteem and confidence issues, thought Tsunade. Alright, Hinata, my first order as your sensei is to try and build up your confidence. I see a lot of potential in you, young lady, but that's worth nothing unless you can see it in yourself. The least I want out of you is for you to get that stutter of yours under control, she stated in a strong tone. The girl stopped mid-sentence. She took a few deep breaths and then, I'll do my best, Shirsho. She managed without a stutter. That's all I want, Hinata, I can't ask for anything more, she said warmly. Tsunade's years of medical knowledge weren't limited to physical medicine. She also had more than a small understanding on human psychology. From Kurenai's reports on the girl, her home life was filled with constant insults and degrading comments by a father who saw her as an utter failure. That kind of abusive environment bred two kinds of children, those who are angry at the world and those who were crushed by it. It seemed that Hinata was one of the later cases. The best way to help children like that was slow and steady care, plenty of support, and just being there for them when they needed it. "Ano?" came the young girl's quiet question. "Yes, Hinata," asked Tsunade. "When will we be leaving?" asked the younger girl, managing only a slight stutter at the beginning. "I'll need a few days to finish wrapping things up after Naruto awakens, which should be any time now," answered the slug Sannin. Before she could continue, Shizen entered the room again. "Shursho, I just finished visiting Naruto at the hospital. His vitals are recovering. Given everything involving Naruto, he should be awake within the hour," stated the dark-haired apprentice. Well, speak of the devil," stated the grinning Sannin. She then remembered her promise to the diminutive Niken Pakken. The woman wrote a quick message on some spare parchment, and summoned a slug. Turning the small gastropod, she quickly gave it a short set of orders. "Please deliver this message to a Niken called Pakken in the Niken Summons realm," she ordered. After a quick bowing of her eye stalks, the slug disappeared in a small puff of smoke. Turning her attention back to her apprentices, Tsunade smiled. "Now let's go make sure our favorite blonde is greeted by a few friendly faces when he first wakes up. I think he'll need them after the news I have to deliver," she finished somberly. Konoha Hospital, main lobby. Shikamaru Nara was not having the best couple of days. After he'd been released from the hospital a day ago after recovering from his fight with the Sound Nin Taiyuya, he'd set out to speak with the rest of his team and apologize for his failure as a leader. It had actually started out well enough. Thanks to Tsunade's intervention, Chuji was recovering nicely and would even be able to leave the hospital after a few days of rest. His large friend had been cheerfully chowing down on anything he could get his hands on to help regain his strength. The young Akimichi heir had put no blame on the young Nara for what had happened. He was just glad everyone had survived and the mission had been a success. Then there was Niji. The young Hyuga prodigy had likewise put no blame on Shikamaru, stating that it was merely the risk involved in taking on such a mission. Kiba had been a royal pain in the ass, constantly how he was going to prove to Hinata how superior he was to Naruto. The Nara had listened for as long as he could to the damned dog user's ranting, but highly doubted the mission would change Hinata's favorite. The girl had been head over heels for Naruto since the academy. Shikamaru doubted one mission and one fight would change that. Lee had been troublesome. That word seemed to be designed for the spandex-wearing taijutsu expert. The only member he'd been unable to see was Naruto, and now his inability to find the blonde was getting even more troublesome. Since yesterday, rumors had begun circulating about the blonde being banished for some foul-up on the mission, and Shikamaru didn't like that. He was team leader, so he should be the one shouldering the blame, not his knuckle-headed friend. Something was off here. In fact, something had been off involving the way the blonde was treated from the very beginning. The young Nara wasn't a genius for nothing. He noticed the constant state of animosity the whole village seemed to radiate against his friend. The sheer curiosity of it all had actually led him to start his unusual friendship with the blonde. Over the years he'd gotten to know the blonde. He'd found no reason for the blonde to suffer the kind of animosity he suffered in the village. Whenever he'd questioned his father about the elder man would roll off some string about how the blonde was a troublemaker. That had never flown with Shikamaru. Even before his friendship with the blonde, he knew no kid, no matter how troublesome, would normally be on the receiving end of that kind of animosity. After getting to know the blonde for a little while, all the explanations started to make even less sense. The blonde was a nice guy. Sure, he was a little loud and liked to pull pranks, but Shikamaru had deduced them as ways to gain attention rather than acting out. Now, with the rumors of him being banished and the pleased looks most of the older villagers were sporting, he knew that something was seriously off, and the only person who could probably tell him the exact reasoning was the blonde. Unfortunately, even finding the blonde was proving difficult. From what he'd found out, the blonde had been badly injured bringing back Sasuke, and was now hospitalized, but no one seemed to be able, or willing, to tell him just where. "Listen, I'm an old friend of Naruto's, and there's some very important I need to discuss with him." The young shadow manipulator tried to reason with the main desk clerk. "I'm sorry, sir, but Mr. Uzumaki's room number is being held due to certain conditions regarding his treatment." The orders came directly from the Hokage. Came the same uninformative reply. "Troublesome," muttered the young Nara as he turned to head toward the Hokage's tower. Hopefully she'd be able to shed some light on what the hell was going on. As Shikamaru was heading for the main entranceway, he caught sight of just the person he was looking for. Tsunade had just strolled into the lobby, followed by Hinata and Shizen on either side. "Tsunade-sama!" called out the young Nara. Turning toward the caller, Tsunade instantly recognized the young Nara clan heir. "Shikamaru-san, what seems to be the trouble?" "I've been trying to find Naruto for the past day or so, but it seems his room's being kept secret on your orders," answered the Nara bluntly. "That's true. There was an incident after Naruto fought Sasuke, and I'd put his room under security for his own protection," answered the Hokage as she continued to walk. "If you need to see him, please come with us. He seems to be close to regaining consciousness, and I have some important things to discuss with him when that happens." The young Nara nodded his head and fell into formation behind the other two. After a few moments of walking, the Nara asked, "Do these things you need to discuss with him have anything to do with the rumors going around about Naruto being banished, and what was this incident that led to such high security measures?" "Yes, it does," answered the Hokage sadly. "As for the incident, Naruto was betrayed by his sensei, Hatake Kakashi, and left for dead." This news shocked the young Nara to his core. Loyalty was something that was deeply ingrained into every Konoha shinobi, and to hear of a Jounin sensei betraying his students, breaking one of the most important bonds in shinobi society, was nearly unthinkable. "What the hell is going on?" mentally questioned the young Nara heir. The four shinobi came to rest outside of a single room. "Cat, bear. Report," came the Hokage's crisp orders. Instantly, two Anbu wearing the appropriate animal masks appeared in front of the Hokage, both bowing on a single knee in respect. Cat was the one to speak up. "Hokage-sama, there have been no incidents since last night. I believe that anyone further involved has either given up after realizing we will not allow them to continue or have heard the rumors circulating about the boy's banishment, and have decided there was no further need to make an attempt on his life." That last part was what had hooked the two young ninjas' attention. Hinata was consumed with worry and Shikamaru grew even more confused. Both were now questioning the reasons behind the level of animosity their friend was receiving. Tsunade nodded her head at this information and made a quick hand motion ordering both Anbu back to their posts. As the four shinobi entered the room, Tantan leaped off the bed she was sharing with the young blonde and happily hopped into Shizen waiting arms, before snuggling deep into them. Tsunade took a seat by the blonde's bed while the rest remained standing. Leaning against a nearby wall, Shikamaru was the first to break the silence. "Tsunade-sama, what the hell is going on?" asked the young Nara, deciding to go blunt on this one. Being political or cunning would be way too troublesome. "First, there are these rumors about Naruto being banished, and nearly every adult in the village is smiling like it's Christmas come early. Then there's his own sensei betraying him, and now people are making attempts on his life while he's bedridden. Why the hell does this whole village seem to have it out for Naruto?" A look that seemed to mix anger and sorrow crossed the elder Senju's face before she answered slowly, "I'm sorry, Shikamaru, but the only one who can answer your question is Naruto himself. The only thing I can tell you is that a law made by my sensei forbids anyone from speaking of it without Naruto's permission under pain of death." Before Shikamaru could respond, the younger blonde began to stir. The younger blonde slowly opened his eyes to find the image of Tsunade smiling down on him. Smiling up at the older blonde, he spoke up, "Hey Bachan, how you doing?" He grinned up at her. Tsunade smiled down at the blonde she'd come to view as her little brother. "Fine Gaki, just fine. How about you feeling okay?" she asked, concerned. "Just great, Bachan, a little tired and a little sore, but otherwise I'm good." "Glad to hear it," she said, smiling sadly at the blonde. Sitting up, the blonde looked at Tsunade confused. "What's the matter, Bachan? You seem pretty upset." "Naruto, I've got some bad news," answered the slug Sannin with tears starting to form in her eyes. "What's the matter, Bachan?" questioned the blonde, a sinking feeling forming in the bottom of his chest. "Naruto, the council has given me orders to have you banished from Konoha," stated the teary-eyed Tsunade, causing both Naruto and Shikamaru to drop their jaws in shock. "But you're the Hokage. They can't order you around, that's against the rules," exclaimed a desperate Naruto. "Yes, but they've threatened me that if I don't have you banished, they will take the case to the fire daimyo and move to have you executed. I can't risk losing you," she breathed out at the end. Naruto stared at her for a minute, then his head dropped. "The reason they're banishing me, it's because of that, isn't it, Bachan?" he asked quietly. "I'm afraid so. They're officially proclaiming some pumped-up charge about you using excessive force to bring the Uchiha back, but yes, that is the root of it," she stated solemnly. Naruto continued to look down at his lap as his hands clutching the sheets for dear life. Slowly his shoulders began to shake and tears began to fall from his eyes. The blonde slowly began to sob uncontrollably. In an instant, Tsunade's arms were wrapped securely around Naruto, pulling him into a comforting embrace as the younger blonde continued to sob into her chest. After a few minutes of sobbing, the blonde managed to sob out a few words. "What am I going to do now, Bachan? What am I going to do?" he sobbed. "Shhhhhh. It's going to be okay, Naruto," she whispered soothingly into his ear. "There's no way in hell I'm going to let those council tems get away with this. I refuse to allow you to go through this on your own." "Why you're not?" asked a still tear-streaked blonde looking up at the older woman. Tsunade smiled down at her favorite blonde and gently wiped away the tears lining his cheeks. You'd better believe I'm not. In case you've forgotten, you're the only reason I came back to Konoha. If those Thames thinks I'm going to sit by and let them banish my little brother, they've got another thing coming. Now I can't go into any details here, but I need your help to make sure things go smoothly. What can I do, Bachan? Asked the blonde, his voice regaining some of its usual life and bluster. Tsunade smiled. Your banishment doesn't officially start until after you're fully healed, so I need you to buy us some time and play sick. Just lie around in bed all day for the next couple of days, okay? Before the blonde could respond, Kyubi's voice echoed through his mind. That's actually a pretty good idea. It'll give us some time to work on your education, and for me to teach you how to work your bloodline. The blonde seemed ready to speak, but Kyubi cut him off again. Don't talk out loud, Kit. Just think and I'll hear you. We wouldn't want your friends thinking you've gone bonkers. The blonde mentally responded, Kyubi? How the hell are you talking to me? Slight side effect of generating your bloodline, Kit. It linked us telepathically. Now I believe it's time you explained what happened between us to your busted grandma. By the way, that was a nice hug. I'm going to be enjoying memories of being buried in that valley for years to come. Finished the fox with a perverted laugh. Returning to reality, the blonde found Tsunade staring at him with a worried expression on her face. Bachan, can we talk alone for a minute? It involves that. He whispered quietly to her. Tsunade looked at him for a moment before she turned to Shizen. Shizen, take Shikamaru and Hinata outside for a moment. I need to do a quick checkup on Naruto, and I'll need a little privacy, she ordered. Getting a nod, the elder apprentice ushered the other two genin out the door, much to Hinata's disappointment and Shikamaru's growing confusion. As the door closed, Tsunade's attention returned to the younger blonde sitting in front of her. Okay, Gaki, what's going on, and how does it involve the fox? Naruto actually broke into a small grin before he stated, You're not gonna believe this, but while I was out I got drawn into my mindscape and... Meanwhile, outside the room, Shikamaru was standing across the hall from the room while Shizen and Hinata stood on either side. Finally deciding to break the silence that seemed to fill the hallway, Shikamaru spoke up. So, does that happen to be the secret the Hokage told us about while we were waiting? Asked the young Nara. Shizen looked up at the young Chunin and nodded her head ever so slightly. As the silence returned, each of the three waiting ninja was wrapped in their own thoughts, all concerning Naruto. Shikamaru was trying to solve the puzzle that was Naruto Uzumaki. Now, normally Shikamaru may have dismissed things like this as troublesome, but the young Nara just couldn't seem to get this mystery out of his head. What is the secret? There's no way Naruto could have done something severe enough to merit this kind of treatment. If he did, then Naruto would have shown some sign of guilt, and keeping it a secret would have been a moot point since he would have been at fault. There's also the fact that he's been on the receiving end of this treatment for as long as I've known him, and no kid could do something that would cause this level of animosity. That leaves two main options: either a relative of his did something and the blame is being transferred to Naruto, or something happened when Naruto was either born or was a kid and somehow he is being blamed for it. Naruto's an orphan, so the first option isn't likely unless his heritage was sealed or people are making an assumption given his name or his appearance. Uzumaki, that name doesn't sound familiar, and if anyone had done something worth that kind of hatred they'd be pretty well known, and the only blondes ever really mentioned in Konoha's history are the Yamanaka clan and the Yondaime, and being related to either wouldn't generate this kind of scorn. That leaves option 2, but what do I know about Naruto's childhood? The only thing I really know about him is that he was born on the day of the Kyuubi attack. Could that be it? Could everyone think Naruto is somehow related to the Kyuubi? That doesn't make any sense. The only thing about him that remotely resembles a fox are those weird birthmarks on his cheek. There's no way that would lead to this kind of hatred. There has to be something more to this, but what? Hinata was also trying to puzzle out the mystery behind Naruto's treatment, but her thoughts were more concerned for the blonde's current status than the reasons behind it. Oh Naruto-kun. Why does everyone seem to be so set against you? You've always been so kind, so nice to everyone around you, but they still treat you so badly. I wish I could have had the courage to be near you sooner, to show you had someone who would be there for you. I promise from now on I'll never leave your side. I'll be there to protect and help you in any way I can. Shizen was more concerned with recent events, since she already knew the blonde's secret. As she thumbed through the reports the Umbu guards had given her, her thoughts were less than pleased. This is definitely bad. I didn't think that the village had this level of animosity toward Naruto. Doctors and nurses trying to poison him in his bed, active and retired shinobi trying to sneak in and attack him, this does not bode well. Even with all the security measures Tsunade's taking to make sure Konoha can't officially pursue us, there's still the chance of some ninja deciding to take matters in their own hands. Hopefully Tsunade's reputation will keep most of those from trying anything, and the fact that actually plotting any attempts to go against her orders would be treason will keep any large groups from forming. There's still the threat of the council forming a band of ninja beneath the table to attack us, but that'll take time, and they won't be able to create too large a group either, or they'll risk being detected. Hopefully our team will be strong enough to handle any group they send. Now there's also Naruto's condition. After all that's happened, I'm not surprised he's so shaken up. But what was that he whispered to Tsunade? I'll have to ask her later. The three ninja were quickly pulled out of their thoughts as a new voice made itself known. Excuse me, but is this the room of one Naruto Uzumaki? X. Back inside the room. A slightly stunned Tsunade sat in her chair, one hand resting in her lap while the other rubbed the bridge of her nose. Okay, just to make sure I've got this all clear. While you were unconscious and recovering in your room, you got dragged into your mindscape and talked to Kyuubi. The fox has actually come to respect you because of everything that's happened and told you about Hirono, Uchiha, and Hitaki's actions while you were out of it. The fox offered you a bargain. He'd give you a bloodline if you'd help him kill my team of a former teammate and a second party who were actually responsible for the Kyuubi attack 14 years ago. Does that about cover it? Asked the elder blonde while she rubbed her nose to forestall the headache she felt coming. Pretty much, Bachan, but you forgot to mention how the fox and I have a mental link now and how the oversized fuzzball's a total pervert. Finished Naruto with a grin. Tsunade's promises had eased the blonde's doubts enough that he was able to return to a semblance of his usual high spirits. Cammy, can't anything be simple with you? Asked the elder blonde while she rubbed her temples, though she didn't hide the grin that had spread across her face. Afraid not, answered the younger blonde, before his voice dropped slightly. Hey Bachan. I know how much Konoha loves bloodlines. Do you think if we told the council about mine, they'd let me stay? He asked with a hint of hope in his voice. Tsunade looked down at him sadly and shook her head. I'm afraid that's not the likeliest solution. They'd probably either claim it was the Kyuubi's doing, which in this case they'd be right for once in their lives, and use it to have you executed, or they'd order sperm samples be taken from you so they could impregnate some civilian women to gain your bloodline and then banish you once the fertilization was a success. But what if we told them the truth about Kyuubi's attack, that it wasn't his fault? Asked the blonde desperately. They'd never believe us. They've lived in hatred and fear of the Kyuubi as a rampaging monster for so long that accepting any other solution would be impossible for them. She answered sadly. So I guess there's no way I'm gonna get to stay, huh? Asked the blonde in a depressed fashion. Afraid not, answered Tsunade before she reached out and placed a comforting hand on the blonde's shoulder. But like I said before, I'm not letting you go through this alone. The blonde rubbed his eyes with the back of his sleeve, before smiling up at the elder blonde. Thanks, Bachan, he said softly. Tsunade smiled down at him before ruffling his hair good-naturedly. Don't worry about it, Gaki. She smiled down at him. However, their warm, heartfelt moment was interrupted by Shizen's voice coming from behind the door. Tsunade-sama, Naruto has some more guests. Guests? Wondered Tsunade aloud. Naruto's room was supposed to be a secret. What kind of guests? She asked. The canine kind, came Shizen's response. That threw Tsunade for a momentary loop before she remembered her message to Pakken. It's alright, I'm done. You can all come in, she answered. The door opened slowly and in walked three dogs followed by Shizen, Hinata, and Shikamaru. The first dog Naruto instantly recognized as the small pug he currently owed his life to, Pakken. Naruto couldn't help but notice that the Hittite the dog wore across his head was now blank. Following him was the biggest dog he'd ever seen in his life. She was huge, easily standing at least 5, maybe 6 feet tall at the shoulders and a good 7 feet long from tip to tail. She had short, dull, silver-blue fur covering most of its long lean form except for a few splashes of black across her face, chest, and paws. And look up Great Dane for an appropriate image. The giant hound also wore a blank Hittite wrapped around her neck, a small silver vest across her large back, with the kanji 4 silver on it, and had a slightly longer than average tanto strapped to her back. Bringing up the rear of the canine procession was a large collie with a large scroll strapped to its back and a blank Hittite wrapped around her throat. Pakken hopped up onto Naruto's lap and gave the boy a short sniff. Hey pup, glad to see you're feeling better, came the small pug's grizzled greeting. Only because of you and your squad, Pakken. Thanks for saving me when Hitaki team left me for dead. I seriously owe you one. Sorry about messing up your relationship with Hitaki and causing you so much trouble. I can't imagine he's taking you saving me well, stated the blonde as he reached out and started to pet the small dog's head in gratitude. Don't worry about it, pup. You didn't deserve that kind of treatment, and Hitaki can kiss my furry ass. Actually, speaking of that team, he's actually part of the reason we're here, and part of the reason we need to speak to you, responded the pug. He easily jumped off the blonde's lap and stepped in front of the large dog. Naruto Uzumaki, allow me to introduce you to Ginkgo-sama, current head of the Nikken summoning contract. Greetings, young Uzumaki, stated the large dog in a strong but feminine voice, as she gave the young blonde a short bow. It's a pleasure, Ginkgo-sama, stated the blonde, returning the bow. What is it you needed to talk to me about? You see, we Nikken prize loyalty above all else, and Hitaki's, the large dog practically growled out the name, actions against you violate everything our kind stands for. For such a crime there is only one punishment, complete banishment from our contract and those of our allies. Both Shizen and Tsunade gave small gasps at this, while Naruto and the rest of the ninja looked confused. It was Naruto, unsurprisingly, who broke the silence. I'm sorry, but what does complete banishment mean? That he can't summon your kind again? Questioned the blonde. Tsunade answered for the dog. Not just that, Naruto. Complete banishment from a contract means that not only will Kakashi never be able to summon again, but neither will any of his children, or their children as long as they bear the Hitaki name. Added to that, most summons will shun someone who's earned this level of punishment. Basically that means Hitaki's entire clan will never be able to sing a summoning contract again. Wow, Hitaki may be a jerk, but I don't think his kids deserve to be punished for his actions, stated Naruto thoughtfully. Ginkgo actually smiled. At least Naruto thought it was a smile, at that. It seems Pakken was not lying when he said you were an honorable one, Uzumaki, but that's beside the point. You see, the Nikken clan has been the summons for the Hitaki clan for many generations, and now with Kakashi and his ilk now forbidden from signing our contract, we are in need of a new summoner, and Pakken has suggested you for that position. She finished calmly. And me? Asked a surprised Naruto. But why me, and I've already signed the Toad's contract? Can a person even have multiple contracts? To answer your questions, pup, yes, humans can have multiple contracts. In fact, in ancient times, before your villages were founded, there were ninja who specialized in signing multiple summoning contracts and working with dozens of different breeds of summons. They were called the Shokuno, summons kings, in honor of their strong relationship with large numbers of different summons. Sadly, their kind faded away with time. The sheer amount of chakra needed for someone to sign, maintain, and effectively use so many contracts was enough to drive their path to extinction. As for why we chose you, Pakken told me of you, and the strong loyalty you've shown. I have also spoken with Gamabunta of the Toads, and he has spoken quite highly of your loyalty. Speaking of how you fought the One-Tail by his side to protect a friend, and how you single-handedly stood against a powerful servant of Manda's summoner to protect the elder blonde. His sons also spoke highly of you and how you seek to defend a village that treats you so poorly in order to protect the few you care for. Answered the large dog honestly. Actually, stated a now depressed Naruto, I won't be protecting Konoha any longer. I've been banished. This statement caused the great Dan sitting in front of him to raise her eyebrow. Why? She asked simply. The official reason is because I used excessive force to bring back Sasuke, answered the blonde. Pakken audibly growled at this. That's bullcrap, you were at least twice as injured as that little brat in the fight, growled out the pug. My thoughts exactly, snorted out Tsunade. If that's not the true reason, then what is? Asked Jinto, never losing her calm voice. Well, it's because the blonde trailed off slightly while rubbing his stomach. Because you hold the Kyuubi no Kitsune sealed inside you? Asked the large dog. That caused an instant reaction from the other two teenagers in the room. Hinata fainted dead off, and Shikamaru's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. You weren't supposed to say that out loud, shouted the blonde. Forgive me, I didn't know it was a secret, apologized the dog, her voice never losing its calm edge. Meanwhile, Shikamaru's brain was going a mile a minute. Naruto's got the Kyuubi sealed inside of him? That explains it. That's why all the adults treat him like the plague. But Naruto's not the Kyuubi, is he? No, that doesn't make any sense. If he was the Kyuubi, he wouldn't have suffered through all the abuse this village had put him through. I need more information. Shikamaru slowly took a deep breath before he spoke up. Naruto, mind explaining what you just said? Asked the young Nara clan heir. Naruto instantly went through his brain, searching for a lie, an excuse, anything to avoid telling his friend the truth and having him hating him like the rest of the village. Suddenly the blonde felt a hand rest on his shoulder. He turned to see Tsunade, who just put Hinata in a chair by his bed. Naruto, she said soothingly, I think you should tell them the truth. But Bachan, started the blonde, before Tsunade caught him off guard. I know you're scared that he and Hinata will hate you like most of the village seems to, but they deserve the truth. Besides, I doubt after you're gone, the council will keep the Sandame's law around any longer than they have to, and I know they won't give them the whole truth. I think this may be your best bet to make sure your friends know the whole truth," she explained calmly. The blonde stared at her for a while, face filled with doubts as he tried to make up some excuse, some reason to avoid the truth, but he eventually nodded his head, understanding her point. Slowly taking in a few deep breaths, the blonde stared at Shikamaru for a few moments before. "You remember when my birthday is, and what they taught us about the Kyuubi attack in the academy?" he asked. Shikamaru nodded his head slowly. "October 10th, the same day as the Kyuubi attack, and they taught us that the Yondaime killed the Kyuubi, sacrificing himself to slay it. I'm taking that wasn't the truth, or at least not the whole truth." The blonde slowly shook his head. "No, it's not," answered the blonde. "You see, the Kyuubi is a being of pure chakra, unkillable by any means, mortal or otherwise. Instead of killing it, the Yondaime sacrificed himself to seal it away in the only vessel strong enough to hold it. An infant whose umbilical cord had just been cut," answered the blonde as he lifted his shirt and channeled some chakra to reveal the seal on his stomach. "This is that seal. The thing that keeps the Kyuubi sealed inside me and marks me as its Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice to protect the village. Ojiji told me that the fourth wanted me to be seen as a hero for what I contain, for protecting the village," finished the blonde. "I see," and the villagers he trailed off. Shikamaru was starting to understand, and he didn't like what he was learning. "They see me as the Kyuubi reborn, the fox trapped in a human shell. That's why Ojiji made that law, forbidding anyone from talking about my relationship with the fox. He hoped I'd be able to at least have a normal childhood," but stated the blonde sadly as his voice trailed off. "He underestimated how much humans hate and fear what they don't understand," finished Shikamaru angrily, recalling the times his own parents had told him to stay away from the blonde. "And now they're banishing just for having the fox sealed inside you?" he asked, getting a nod from the blonde. Shikamaru suddenly shouted and rammed his fist into a nearby wall, leaving a large spiderweb of cracks. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard," growled out the young Nara. Naruto was more than a little surprised by his friend's angry action, especially since it wasn't directed at him. "You don't hate me now?" questioned the blonde quietly. The young Nara turned toward his longtime friend and shook his head. "Of course not," answered Shikamaru. "You're no demon. Anyone who took even a second to talk to you would know that, and we've been friends for too long for me to even think that about you. You're just a good-natured buffoon with a serious ramen addiction," finished the young Nara with a small grin. Naruto quickly rubbed the back of his eyes to keep the tears from flowing. "Thanks, Shika. I just hope that Hinata agrees with you." His statement was cut off as said Hyuga tackled him into a large hug. It seems the young Hyuga heiress had woken up when Naruto had started his story and had quickly made her decision on the matter. "Naruto-kun is Naruto-kun. Anyone who can't see past the fox is a baka," sobbed out the young Hyuga heiress as she buried her face in his chest. That is until she realized what she was doing and promptly fainted again, this time her face showing a major blush. "I think you can take that as a heartfelt agreement with me," answered Shikamaru with a smug grin. Naruto could only nod as he helped resettle Hinata into her seat. "I'm glad that that matter has been resolved," came the voice of Ginkgo, who everyone had forgotten about in the sudden excitement. "Yeah, sorry about snapping at you like that, Ginkgo-san. I was just a little surprised," apologized the blonde. "No harm done, young Uzumaki," reassured the large dog. "Now, as I was saying, is the fact that you hold the Kyuubi the reason they are banishing you?" "Hi," answered the blonde in a depressed tone. "Well, then you are at no fault for it, so it doesn't affect my decision to offer you our contract," finished the large Dane. "But doesn't your clan serve Konoha? Isn't that why you have its symbol on your forehead protectors?" asked the blonde. "Our Hittite bear the mark of our master's village or of his clan," answered Pakken. "They are a mark of our loyalty to them, not a village." "That is correct," agreed Ginkgo. "You have shown loyalty beyond what many humans I've seen are capable of. That is what makes you worthy as our summoner." Naruto blushed at the praise before he nodded his head. "I'd be honored to accept the Nikken summoning contract," he said with a low bow. "Excellent," stated Ginkgo, before she motioned her head for the collie bearing the contract to step forward. The smaller dog gently hopped onto the edge of Naruto's bed and shrugged of the contract so it rested in the blonde's lap. Naruto slowly unrolled the scroll until he came to a blank segment. As the blonde looked at the scroll, he noticed that over half the names on the scroll read out Hataki, which wasn't surprising considering it was a clan scroll. He also noticed that Kakashi's name, instead of being black or red for a former or current contract holder, was written in a venomous green. Biting his fingers, Naruto quickly wrote his name in the blank spot next to Kakashi's before placing his handprint directly below it. Re-rolling the scroll, Naruto returned it to the collie, who took it without a word. In an instant, all three of the Ninken's Hittite adopted a swirl in the center. The contract is complete, stated Ginkgo. I and the rest of my clan look forward to fighting by your side in the future, Naruto-sama. She finished with a low bow, followed closely by the Kali and Pakin. Thank you, stated the blonde, quietly returning the bow. I'll do everything in my power to prove myself worthy of this great gift. He spoke softly. Ginkgo merely smiled at him again. I'm sure you will, child, I am sure you will. Now before I go, I have a final gift to give you, she stated calmly, before shrugging her shoulders to bring the tanto on her back to a position where she grabbed it with her mouth before carrying it forward and presenting it to Naruto. The blonde slowly took the blade in both hands and held it before him. That is the Hako Chakura II, White Light Chakra Saber, an ancient weapon my clan have given to their summoner since our contract was forged. Its blade is sharp beyond compare, and when chakra is channeled through it, it will release a stream of pure white chakra. Summon me when you are ready and fully recovered, and I will teach you the techniques for it. Hatake mentioned that blade before, saying it was a family heirloom. He also said that it was destroyed in the war by an Iwa Nin, stated the Hokage. Ginkgo snorted, as if a blade like this could be broken so easily by human hands. Kakashi lost the right to bear that blade when his cowardice and bigotry cost his friend his life. It was only because of his father's abilities and many great deeds as our summoner that we allowed him to retain the contract after that. Even then, he was limited to only a single pack of Niken until he proved himself worthy of redemption. Obviously, that was a mistake. She finished with a slight growl. Ginkgo-san? Came our young blonde's questioning voice. Yes, Naruto-sama, came the large dog's reply. What exactly can the Niken summons do? I know from working with Pakin that they're great trackers, but what else can they do? That depends entirely on who you summon, Naruto-sama. While nearly all of us are excellent trackers, there are also those who are better at combat. Our clan as a whole can dig through the earth as easily as you humans swim in the water, and that ability is used in many of our combination attacks. You should know that while each of us Niken can be summoned as individuals, we prefer to be called in our packs. Each pack has its own function. Pakin's pack, for instance, is a balanced squad between combat and tracking, and my pack is primarily a combat squad. If that's all, Naruto-sama, I think it's time we return home. After getting a nod of approval, the three Niken disappeared in a puff of smoke. Well, you've certainly had a lively day for someone who hasn't left their room, stated Tsunade with a small smirk. Yeah, I guess so, stated the blonde as he studied his new weapon. Suddenly a thought occurred to the blonde and he turned his attention to Shikamaru, who was currently resting against the wall. Hey Shika, he called out. What? Called out the Nara, heir, annoyed at being disturbed. If you told the rest of the rookies about the fox, how do you think they would react? Asked the blonde, slightly nervous. Shika was silent for a moment as he adopted his thinking pose. After a few moments he answered, Chuji would react the same way I did. He's been your friend for as long as I have and would probably get pretty pissed when he finds out how badly you've been treated. Ino would be really surprised, but despite her fangirl tendencies she's a good friend, and she'd stick by your side. I know Lee would overreact and start spouting off about how unyouthful. The young Nara gave a small shudder at the word. The village has been to you. I don't know the rest of Team Guy well enough to make any decisions though. And Niji Nizan would understand, stated Hinata's quiet tone. The young Hyuga was once again conscious and had decided to put in her own 2 cents. He understands better than most what it's like to have a S-seal dictate your life. Kiba I am not sure about. He's had a bit of a G-grudge against us since you beat him in the Seichunin exams, and I don't really feel like I can know him as well as I did before. He's always been a bit prideful, but nicey enough, but since he lost to you he's been acting pretty vindictive. As for Shinoku, I know why you can trust him. He's very illogical and his C-clan also has to deal with a great deal of prejudice for what they hold within themselves. If there's one clan you can trust it's the Aburames. Agreed Tsunade, they were the only members of the clan council that voted against their banishment. Hinata and Shikamaru didn't miss that nugget of information. Hinata wasn't really surprised, in fact she expected it of her father. The man had always hated Naruto, and had constantly belittled him in front of her just to mock her as well. Shikamaru, on the other hand, was both surprised and pissed. His father had always taught him to not judge others and to think things out logically, but here the man was voting for Naruto's banishment because of something his friend couldn't control. This did not bode well for the future of the Nara clan. Why are you asking them about this, Naruto? Came Shizen's question. Well, I was hoping Shika could tell everyone the truth about the fox once I was gone, answered the blonde. Why me? Why not just tell them yourself before you leave? Asked the annoyed Nara. Because if I tell them myself before I leave, the council may find out about and try to use it against me to have me executed for trying to corrupt the youth of Konoha or something like that. Also, you're a lot smarter than Nishika, and I know you'll be able to tell them better than I could. You've got my permission to tell them, so that should protect you from the law, and you can tell whoever you want, whenever you feel the time is right. Will you do this for me, Shika? Asked the blonde. Fine. Sighed out the Nara, before muttering a short troublesome under his breath. Well, everyone, I think our blonde patient has had enough excitement for one day. We'll check back in soon, Naruto. Until then, your body is still recovering, so take it easy, stated Tsunade in her best doctor's orders voice as she began to usher the small group out the door. Everyone left with a chorus of goodbyes, leaving our blonde hero alone with Taunton, his new sword, his thoughts. Alright kid, now that they're gone we better get started. We've got a lot of ground to cover if we're going to make up for half a lifetime's worth of sabotage. Luckily for us, time passes slower in your mindscape, so it's off to school. And his annoying giant, red tutor. As Tsunade, Hinata, Shizune, and Shikamaru left the hospital, Tsunade looked up and noticed the position of the sun. It was getting close to noon, and she had her meeting with Jiraiya to discuss the details of her plan with the man, as well as explain and convince, i.e. threaten, him into going along with it. Turning her attention to the two young chunin, though only one officially had the title, she began to give out orders. Hinata, I'd like you to return to your home and tell your father that I need to meet with him this evening at 7 in my office. Tell him it involves an important political matter, and that I want you to accompany him. If he asks for a reason, merely say that the matter involves you directly. Hinata nodded her head before setting off to go speak with her father. Tsunade turned her attention to Shikamaru. Now Shikamaru, what happened up in that room and the things we discussed need to remain tight-lipped for a while. You now understand that there are forces at work in this village that want to see serious harm come to that Gaki I see as a little brother, and if anything happens to him because you let something slip, well, let's just say I'll show you a whole new meaning to the word troublesome. A very bloody, very painful meaning, understand? She finished while cracking her knuckles in a slightly threatening manner. While she trusted and even liked the young Nara heir, time and experience had taught her that it never hurt to add a little intimidation when it came to important matters. Shikamaru gulped slightly at that. The Nara heir knew the elder blonde was not bluffing. No need to worry, Hokage-sama. Like I said before, Naruto's been my friend for a long time, and I'm not about to betray him for something he couldn't control. Besides, it would be too troublesome to do something like that, answered the young Nara, before he turned and left. Glad that's settled. Now I'm off to speak with a super pervert, and I do believe you still have to head to the bank, Shizune, stated the blonde to her dark-haired companion, who responded with a short bow before the two set off in opposite directions. A few moments later, Hokage Tower, top floor. Tsunade walked down the hallway approaching her office. Turning the final corner, she was greeted by the sight of her old teammate, the Toad Sage Jiraiya, standing right outside the doorframe, and wearing an expression that somehow mixed worry, fear, and anger all at once. You're early, you old pervert, she called out with a large smirk plastered across her face as she approached the large man. Which threat motivated you the most, the one to your precious research material, your perverted legacy of novels, or your manhood? She asked as she opened the doors to her office so they could talk in private. Were the threats really necessary, Heim? You know I am at your beck and call if you but utter my name, came the flirtatious response of the great perverted sage. Tsunade ignored him as she did a quick hand seal to activate the privacy seals embedded in the walls, and felt the momentary flare of chakra around them that indicated they'd activated successfully. This is too important to risk, Jiraiya, responded the blonde seriously as she sat down behind her desk. The tone of the woman's voice had hardened from the good-natured tone she'd assumed when they were talking outside to a strict and commanding one. Jiraiya recognized that tone immediately. Tsunade only took that tone when she was utterly serious about something. It was a voice he'd come to fear from their younger days, when that voice was directed at him whenever she'd threatened to castrate him if she caught him peeking on her. Something was definitely wrong. What's the matter, Tsunade? He asked, his own voice becoming serious. It's those bastards in the council. Yesterday they pretty much ordered me to have Naruto banished, or they'd see him dead by any means necessary, she stated shortly. They did what? Roared the aged sage, a shocked and enraged look filling his usually jovial face. You heard me, Jiraiya, came the woman's icy reply. I think you'd better start at the beginning, stated Jiraiya as calmly as he could. Tsunade nodded her head and began to tell Jiraiya everything that had happened over the past few days, from Kakashi's betrayal, as Pakken had told it to her recent visit to Naruto's hospital room and learning about the Kyuubi's gift to Naruto and revealing the truth to both Hinata and Shikamaru. By the end of the story, nearly an hour had passed and Jiraiya was looking ready to kill something. That slimy little masked bastard, growled out the toad sage, his long mane of spiky white hair becoming even sharper and spikier, a few even launching off and embedding deep into the nearest wall, while his oversized fists clenched repeatedly. I swear if I ever get my hands on that little rodent, I'll shove that mask of his so far down his throat, he'll be using it as toilet paper. And those council bastards, I'll hunt each and every one of them down, and then I'll. That's enough, Jiraiya, came Tsunade's sharp tone, cutting off Jiraiya's tirade before it could build up any steam. As much as I'd love to hear about what you'd like to do to those bastards, and how much I'd love to go on a rampage with you, right now we've got bigger problems. Like what happens to Naruto. I thought I was. We go in, find everyone in the council and rip them to shreds, snarled out the enraged Sannin. And then what? Asked Tsunade, playing the voice of reason. Even if you and I can kill off the entire council, which given our skills wouldn't be much of a challenge, what happens then? I'll tell you what, the survivors organize and go to the Fire Daimyo. We'll be labeled traitors and be hunted down, and Naruto will still be banished. Or worse, they'll try and blame everything we do on Naruto, saying he corrupted or manipulated us, and have him executed. Jiraiya deflated a little at Tsunade's reasoning before he finally managed to cool down. I take it you have a better plan? He asked. I was hoping you'd ask that, answered Tsunade, a large and evil smirk plastered across her face as she set about telling Jiraiya her plan. It took nearly another hour to answer all the Toad Sage's questions. At the end, Jiraiya was nodding slowly with his head slightly cupped by one large palm. It's a pretty good plan, but why shouldn't I be the one to take Naruto out of Konoha? I'm already his sensei and you're already the Hokage. It seems like it would save us both some extra trouble, came the sage's final question. I've got 3 good reasons. First, you're better at all this below-the-table, covert and subtle, political crap than I am. You'll be able to do more damage and better hold off the council's attempts than I ever could. Second, it'll cause a lot more chaos if the current Hokage leaves for good, rather than the wandering sage, and that's exactly what we want for the time being. To cause as much chaos in Konoha as we can, answered Tsunade with a smirk. Jiraiya nodded his head. Those were some pretty good reasons. And the third reason? He asked. Tsunade's smirk grew downright malicious as she answered, those motherfuckers dared to try and order me around and turn me into their faithful little puppet by threatening my baby brother. I want them to know that doing that to a Kage, a Senju, and a woman most of all, is a really, really bad idea. She finished with a near-demonic snarl at the end. That's your big reason? Asked Jiraiya, though some little part of his brain was telling him to let it go. It's either that or the fact that I can and will fulfill the final part of my earlier threat here and now if you don't agree with me, replied the slug Sannin, her voice laced with subtle killing intent. Jiraiya audibly gulped. Suddenly, your reasoning makes a whole lot more sense to me. I'm in complete and total agreement, he answered quickly. Tsunade gave him a small, slightly evil, grin. So glad to hear that, Rokudame Dano, she said while she smirked between interlaced fingers. Everything's going according to plan. Now I can only hope that a bit of the Gaki's luck has rubbed off on me. I'm going to need every drop of it, if I want my next meeting to go just as smoothly. 7 p.m., outside Hokage's office. Hayashi Hyuga was feeling a strange combination of annoyed, worried, and slightly hopeful. He was annoyed at being called to a private meeting by the Hokage, along with his failure of an eldest child, and that old crow of a Hokage had the nerve to dictate orders to him, the head of the illustrious Hyuga clan, like he was a fresh genin. He was worried because he knew that the Hokage bared a grudge against him, due to his outspoken nature on having the Kyuubi brat banished. Could she be calling him to exert some kind of petty vengeance on him? He wasn't worried that the woman would kill him, well mostly he wasn't. Even the Hokage couldn't get away with murdering a clan head without just cause, and he knew she had nothing on him and that she was smart enough not to try it. That still left some sort of political sabotage to damage his or his clan's reputation. The only bright side to this was the fact that it involved his eldest daughter. With any luck, what the Hokage had planned would get the girl killed or at least give him enough reason to have her regulated to the branch family so he could name Hanabi the new clan heir. As the Hyuga clan head entered the office, he found Tsunade sitting at her desk, her apprentice, Shizen he thought the girl's name was, standing at her side. On the other side of the desk was a pair of comfortable chairs, one slightly larger and more elaborate in design than the other, but neither as lavish as the one the Kage was sitting in. You wish to see us, Hokage-sama? He said in the typical cold, emotionless tone that the Hyuga prided themselves on. The woman stared at Hayashi for a moment before she spoke up. I did, Hyuga-dano, please take a seat, she said while indicating the chairs in front of her desk. Hayashi used a special Hyuga clan technique to activate his dojutsu for the briefest of moments to scan the chair for any possible assassination tools. Finding nothing on his chair, and not even bothering to check his daughters, the Hyuga leader quickly sat himself into the larger of the two seats, with Hinata quickly following behind in the seat next to him. After both had been and the Hokage hadn't continued, he decided to start the conversation again. You told my daughter that there was a political matter that involved myself and her. Hayashi had decided to forego the necessary political niceties since the room was secluded, and all the parties inside knew of the two's rather large distaste for each other. Tsunade instantly recognized the lack of formalities and decided to reciprocate and go for the blunt. It's rather simple, Hayashi-san. I wish to name your daughter as my newest apprentice. The statement wasn't a lie, even if she'd already made it official on paper, until it was publicly announced or the papers shown it wasn't completely official. You what? Asked the Hyuga clan head. This was certainly not what he'd expected. And why, pray tell, do you want her? He asked as if he was referring to something repugnant. Tsunade slightly twitched at the insult to the girl. I see a great deal of potential in your daughter, something that I can shape into an exemplary medical nin, she stated honestly. Hayashi was thinking, what on earth could she be planning? He thought to himself. Hayashi was a master at reading others, as were all true masters of the Byakugan, and he couldn't detect any lies coming from the woman sitting in front of him. To gather more information, he asked a new question. What exactly would this training of yours contain? Medic training as well as my strength enhancement techniques, answered Tsunade, setting the bait and now throwing the line. If you both accept, then we'll need to leave soon to start her training, probably by the week's end, she added as an afterthought. Leave? Questioned the clan head. Things were starting to fall into place. Yes, I dislike starting to train my apprentices within the closed walls of Konoha, she answered, lying through her teeth as the Hyuga head noted. If your daughter accepts, we'll need to head out on a brief training journey. So that's it, thought the Hyuga head. She's using training the girl as an excuse to accompany the blonde for a period after his exile. Probably to make sure we don't attempt anything on the boy after he leaves. I could easily stop this by denying her request, but then she could just take it to another prospect. But why her? Why risk alerting me and the rest of the council to the truth behind her plans, thought the Hyuga. Vocally he asked, why should I accept this offer? Wondering if she'd catch the true meaning to his question. Apparently she did. Because it would be a great asset to the Hyuga clan if the heiress and possibly the next clan head was trained by one of the Sannin, particularly the one who's created a technique that would greatly benefit your clan's specialization. She answered honestly. So that's her game, thought the Hyuga head maliciously. She's trying to improve the girl's chances of becoming clan head, probably to plant a sympathetic voice in the council for the boy's future and possibly give him a chance at returning. She knows the Hyuga clan has been after her strength-enhancing techniques since the day she created them. Combining them with the Jukin would make the Hyuga's taijutsu almost unstoppable. My father even offered her a betrothal contract to me, despite the near 20-year age difference, just for the chance to obtain that jutsu. She thinks that if she teaches the girl those techniques, she'll be automatically chosen as clan head so she can disseminate them to the rest of the clan. What the old bat doesn't know is that the Hyuga bylaws forbid the learning of Na-clan jutsu to main branch members, unless they're taught by another Hyuga. All I need to do is wait until she learns the technique, then I can have the girl placed into the branch family for breaking that law, and then order her to teach the main branch that technique. The proper daughter will become clan head, I'll get to banish that fool girl to the branch, and the Hyuga will gain the ultimate taijutsu. All at the cost of letting her spend a little more time with the fox brat, finished Hayashi as a slight smirk split his face. How long would this training journey take? Asked Hayashi aloud. The Hokage thought for a moment, 2, maybe 3 months, give or take, to teach her the basics of everything, answered the Kage honestly, with a slight shrug. Very well, I approve of you taking the girl as your apprentice, agreed the Hyuga clan head. I'm glad to hear it. Now we'll probably be leaving by late Friday, early Saturday at the latest. I'll need you to give me some copy scrolls on the advanced style of Jukin. I'll need them to teach Hinata how to incorporate my techniques into the style, as well as continue her training while we're gone, she stated coolly. That's fine. I'll have copies of all the main prepared and have Hinata bring them to your office by Thursday. I'll also have her bring her traveling bag so you can leave whenever you're ready. I assume the scrolls will be safe in your hands? He asked, usually granting the Jukin scrolls, even mere copies, to anyone not of the clan was frowned on, but given the circumstances, he could arrange something. Of course, agreed the Hokage. If you wouldn't mind, I'd also like to ask you to see that the rest of the council is aware of our departure, to make sure no panic is caused. I believe there's a meeting scheduled for Monday? Just tell them then that the meetings will be postponed for 3 months or until I return. I've already had a temporary replacement selected to handle any emergencies while I'm gone, she asked with a small smile. Hayashi returned the smile. He knew what she was asking, to keep it quiet until after they left. She knew that a majority of the council would protest it after her real motivations were revealed, so she needed a messenger on the council to make it known after she was gone. Hayashi now had a reason to keep it quiet since, if they stopped it, he'd lose this chance as well. Of course, Hokage-sama. If you've also reached a decision on the Uzumaki child, I'd be glad to deliver that as well. Hayashi noticed Hinata twitch slightly at the mention of the boy's banishment, but ignored it as a show of the foolish girl's sympathies for the demon whelp. Another reason the girl would never be clan head. He'd be dead long before he let anyone who sympathized with that creature lead his clan. Yes, growled out the Sannin, anger clearly defining every aspect of her being. Despite my grave misgivings and disgust at the council's decision, I see no way to avoid it, and am forced to agree. If that's all, Hayashi-san, there are a few things I need to discuss with your daughter in private before we can be ready to leave. I'm sure you have other duties to perform, not to mention those scrolls to prepare. Finished the Sannin. Very well, agreed Hayashi as he stood to leave. Before the man turned an icy gaze to his eldest daughter, do not disappoint your new sensei Hinata, and don't bring any further disgrace to the Hyuga clan, he ordered before turning and walking the door. Giving the Hyuga head a few moments to vacate the tower, Tsunade activated the privacy seals so she can speak privately with her newest apprentice. Do you think the pompous ass bought it? Asked Tsunade. I think so, Tsunade Shirsho, answered Hinata, while she worked to keep her stutter under control. I am not a master at reading others like many of my clan, but I know my father and his actions were sincere. Any reason to believe he was trying to deceive you? Asked Shizen. Hinata quickly shook her head. If father doubts my abilities to read anyone, he wouldn't waste the efforts attempting to deceive a failure like me. She whispered the last part as her stutter grew worse and she looked away. Tsunade's expression softened. Hinata, you're not a failure. Kurenai knows that, and I know it as well. Now only you need to believe it, she said encouragingly to the girl. The girl managed a small smile at her new sensei. Thank you, Shirsho. She managed to whisper without stuttering, before she asked, Shirsho, what was the point of all that? It was mainly a delaying tactic. Once the council finds out we're gone, and we don't intend to come back, they're going to try something, no matter what decrees I make. This buys us some time to get clear of Konoha and start training before they try anything, answered the elder blonde. But why my father? Surely one of the other counselors would have been easier to manipulate, asked Hinata. Not really, replied Tsunade. I knew exactly what Hayashi would want, my strength-enhancing technique. The entire Hyuga clan has been after it since I first created it when I was younger. They've tried everything from ordering, to bargaining, to blackmail and threats in an attempt to get it. Hell, your grandfather even offered me a marriage contract with Hayashi in an attempt to get me to fork it over. All of it gave me a rich bed of experience and tricks for dealing with the Hyuga clan. The most important trick is to never lie, but to tell to the truth in a way that gets you what you want, and their all-seeing eyes will blind them. The Byakugan lets them tell if someone is lying by reading their body language, but they tend to forget that the truth can be a lot more deceptive than 1,000 lies when told in the right way. She finished with a dark smirk, getting nods of approval from both present apprentices. 1 day later, 3 days before departure, Hokage's office. Tsunade was sitting in her office drinking a cup of tea, ignoring the paperwork that was slowly accumulating for the moment. She just completed the next stage of her plan, hiring and sending a messenger ninja to deliver a message directly from her to the fire daimyo, with a request to retrieve his response and bring it back to her in all possible haste. The messenger ninja were specifically trained to make sure that no one but the intended recipient received the package, no matter what their position or place, and were some of the swiftest shinobi to be found. Most daimyos understood the messenger ninja's role and allowed them in their presence without having to go through aides. The messenger ninja were non-combatants, taking strict vows to never raise a hand unless in the defense of their delivery. Any who broke those vows and misused their position, any other ninja who assumed a messenger ninja's identity for their own gains, or anyone who tried to use the messenger nin as tools for assassination, were swiftly and ruthlessly eliminated. The message had contained a large report on what had happened in Konoha, and a vague description of her plans, along with some of her decrees. Tsunade and Jiraiya had worked tirelessly for hours planning and writing the message, wording it just so to give the fire daimyo all the information he needed on the situation without giving away too many details on the plan. She was especially proud of how she'd worded the council's demands to her, giving it a clear description of how the council had not only usurped her authority, but also used his name as if he was their tool. That would hopefully aggravate the daimyo enough to get him to agree with the minor requests she'd sent him, mostly approvals for some of the more politically heavy drafts she sent to him. Nothing to do now but wait and hope it worked. It would be another day at least before the messenger returned from the capital. Even if this stage didn't work, it would only cause some minor setbacks, and Konoha may be able to respond slightly faster to the plan, giving them some more problems down the road. To be honest, the plan was mostly completed. Now all she had to do was wait for the fire daimyo's response and wrap up a few more details. Then she'd initiate the final phase, and it would be time to go. As Tsunade contentedly sipped her tea, the sudden sound of her office doors slamming open caused her to look up. Standing in her doorway was the irate form of one Sakura Haruno. Tsunade arched an eyebrow at the pink-haired fangirl. Any particular reason you're barging into my office, Haruno? She asked in an annoyed voice, a slight glare settling across her vision. The young Haruno stomped forward, anger present on all her features. For a brief moment Tsunade thought she misjudged the girl and she was angered about her teammate's banishment. The rumors had been made official by a public announcement from the council earlier today. Sadly, those brief hopes for the pink-haired Kunoichi's redemption burst into flames when the young girl growled, I understand you've made that Hyuga your second apprentice? Not exactly, you pink-haired failure of a Kunoichi. Naruto's my second apprentice and Hinata's third, thought the Sannin before she actually answered. I don't see how that's any business of yours, Haruno. The Haruno glared began to shriek wildly. I refuse to allow that. I'm supposed to be your next apprentice. I demand you remove that pale-eyed slut from her position and have her arrested for assaulting me. Came the ear-splitting shrieks of rage. Tsunade was really starting to get annoyed. First of all, you have no right to demand who I make my apprentice. Second of all, your mother already tried to press charges against Hinata and they were thrown out because 5 of the 6 witnesses present testified that she only attacked you to prevent you from attacking a fellow Konoha shinobi, and the 6th witness's testimony was thrown out since he received severe blunt force trauma to most of his body shortly afterwards. Answered the Sannin shortly, leaving out the fact that she was the one who caused said trauma. You should be counting your blessings that you're not in jail right now because of it, something I could change very quickly if you don't leave now. Growled out the Sannin. Sakura, either out of ignorance or arrogance, ignored the blatant threat. That's not the point. I'm the heiress to the Haruno clan, and I have the best chakra control of all the Kunoichi in the village. I'm much better suited as your apprentice than that, she responded forcefully. While I won't deny you have excellent chakra control, growled out the Sannin, you lack something that I view as necessary to become my apprentice. If you still wish to become a medic nin, then I'd advise you to go to the hospital and apply for classes. What could I lack that little wallflower actually has? Shrieked out the enraged Haruno. Tsunade glared at the Haruno once again. Loyalty. Growled out the Sannin. She stood up for one of her fellow shinobi, despite her shy nature, while you attacked one, your own teammate no less. She finished with a snarl. Snorted the Kunoichi. Is that what this is about, that I attacked that blonde baka you seem to care about? Why do you even care? That baka of a blonde is nothing compared to Sasuke. I need this training to get stronger so I can help Sasuke-kun and prove to him that I'm strong enough to be his wife. That baka deserves to be banished for hurting Sasuke-kun. She finished as if she had stated an irrefutable fact. Her formerly smug expression melted into one of pure panic as she felt an intense surge of killing intent directed directly at her from the blonde Hokage sitting at her desk. Now listen here, you pink-haired excuse for a Kunoichi. Hissed out the Sannin as she openly glared at the Haruno who stood paralyzed in front of her. I may have been forced to listen as your of a mother, and the rest of the council banish Naruto, but I will not sit idly by and let a pathetic weakling like you insult him. Now you have 2 options: leave through the door now, or I'll throw you out the window. It seems that the combination of killing intent and the look in the Hokage's eyes actually managed to get through the girl's oversized forehead, and the girl left at a run. Same day, Konoha Hospital. Hinata was at the happiest she'd been in a long time. The plan was going well, and if Tsunade's predictions were right, she'd be leaving the village, not to mention her oppressive family, alongside Naruto-kun in just 3 more days. It had hurt a little lying to Kurenai-sensei and Shino about her leaving for only a brief period, but she hoped they'd understand when the truth came out. She was now in the hospital to deliver the news to her final teammate. As she opened the door to the correct room, she walked in and greeted, "Hello, Kiba-san." "Hey Hinata-chan, how you doing?" greeted the dog wielder, as he looked up from his bed. Akamaru looked up from his resting place on Kiba's stomach and gave her a short bark of greeting before lying back down. Fine, Kiba-san. Ignoring the open familiarity Kiba had used. She never used kun when talking to Kiba, worried that it would give the boy some false hope or indication that he may have started to earn her affections. While she was flattered by Kiba's constant attention, her heart belonged to only one person. Shino had understood this, but Kiba was a bit too stubborn. I actually came to tell you something. I've been named Tsunade's newest apprentice, and am going to be departing with her on a short training journey by the week's end. She lied with the briefest of stutters. Tsunade's worm words over the past few days had greatly helped her. While a terrible liar by Hyuga standards, on normal standards Hinata could be considered a master of the craft, one of the benefits of being part of a clan that could tell that you were lying by the smallest twitch. That's great news, shouted Kiba excitedly. Hey, you should let me take you out on a date later to celebrate. He finished with a large grin. Hinata sighed inwardly. The boy just couldn't get it through his head that she wasn't interested. I'm sorry, Kiba-san, but I have a lot of packing and preparations to do since we're leaving so soon, she answered. Kiba's good mood soured instantly. Hinata, he said solemnly, I know you have a huge crush on Naruto. That actually surprised her. Hinata had always assumed that Kiba had been too dense to notice. If you knew, why did you constantly ask me out? She asked, her stutter growing slightly as she became more embarrassed. Because I'm 10 times better than that dope, answered Kiba arrogantly. Now the dog boy was beginning to get on Hinata's nerves. Ever since the Sakura incident, Hinata had found her temper shortening when it came to people insulting her crush. Maybe, the stress and anger that day had brought on had affected her mind, or maybe she just snapped. Hinata honestly didn't care either way. You excuse me? She questioned. Come on, I'm twice the guy that dope is. I'm a clan heir, a future member of the ruling body of Konoha. He's just a no-name orphan, an idiot, and a screw-up who can't even bring back the Uchiha without causing trouble. I thought that the council banishing him would have finally gotten through to you how much better dash. Kiba's tirade was suddenly and violently cut off as Hinata slapped him across the face. The force of the slap caused his head and neck to arch violently to the side. Kiba was stunned. Hinata had never gotten mad, let alone acted violently, towards anyone before. Rubbing his stinging cheek, he turned to look at the shy, mousy girl. He was quite surprised to find the young Hyuga glaring daggers at him. Now listen to me well, Kiba Inuzuka, growled out the girl. Naruto-kun is twice the man you'll ever be. He's kind, considerate, and would never mock someone who did their best. If you think that for one moment that him being banished is going to let you replace him in my heart, then you're sorely mistaken. I could never care for someone who'd use another's misfortune like that, especially the misfortune of someone who once considered them a friend. Goodbye, Inuzuka-san, you can consider this meeting the end of our friendship. She finished coldly, never stuttering once thanks to her anger. With her peace said, the Hyuga heir turned and marched away. Kiba stared after her, mouth slightly agape, hand still rubbing his stinging cheek. Slowly shock turned to anger, and the young Inuzuka growled lightly. Just you wait, Hinata. I don't care what it takes, I'll make you mine, even if I have to force you, growled out the Inuzuka heir. Hokage's office, 2 days before departure. Tsunade sat smirking behind her desk. She had been less than pleased yesterday after Hinata had reported what had happened between her and Kiba yesterday. The dog user could become an obstacle in the future, but luckily the boy's injuries were serious enough that he wouldn't be out of his hospital bed until after they had left. But today was a good day. Why? Because her messenger had just returned from the capital with her folder, sealed with the Fire Daimyo's seal, and a letter from the Fire Daimyo himself. After receiving the letter and paying the messenger nin, she inquired if he or another messenger would be within the area in the next couple days to handle another delivery. The messenger had stated that he would indeed be in the area for a few more days if no new missions came up, and asked about her request. Tsunade gave him a brief description, and the messenger nin had given her an acknowledgement that the mission would be acceptable and a quick price estimate. Tsunade had thanked him and requested that either he or another messenger be in her office at 7 p.m. 2 days from now. The messenger had nodded and given the woman a formal salute before disappearing. Now the slug Sanin was reading the response from the Fire Daimyo, and couldn't help but smirk. It seems that the message she and Jiraiya had sent had worked perfectly. Amidst the standard political babble, Tsunade could clearly read the signs of annoyance and disapproval toward the council's actions in the daimyo's letter. Granted, the man was probably angrier that the council had dared to usurp his name and authority, even if it was done in such a subtle and roundabout way, than he was about any mistreatment on Naruto's part. Still, the man had given his approval on all the documents she'd sent him, stating that they all had his full backing, along with his assurance that any other papers she sent him, within reason, would also have his approval. Tsunade's couldn't help but let her smirk grow at that part. The man probably hadn't fully understood what he'd agreed to. Most daimyos usually had a strict policy of non-interference with their shinobi villages. It was a way to ensure that any damages or enemies that the village makes in the course of completing a mission wouldn't harm the entire country. In exchange for their level of independence from the daimyo's control, the village agreed to follow the daimyo's orders without question, so when the daimyo did get involved in village politics, he had the absolute authority. Granted, there were shows to display the unity between the daimyo and the village to ensure that everyone thought they were working in perfect unity, like how the daimyo had a say in the promotions during the Chunin exam, but in reality it was mostly just for show. In truth, the daimyo had little to no active knowledge about the day-to-day running of the village. Though that was probably for the best, Even the smallest ninja village was a hotbed for politics and intrigue, a place filled with enough faction forming, alliances, betrayals, and positioning on a daily basis that it could outdo several smaller nations in the sheer size and amount of political intrigue it generated, and that was just inter-village politics and not all the spies and agents from other villages and factions. The fire daimyo, or any daimyo for that matter, already had to deal with a great deal of political intrigue in their own courts, adding in what he'd have to face if he was directly involved with the politics of one of the largest hidden villages, which was filled with more political intrigue than most nations, and the man would quickly be driven mad. So most of the daimyos gave the villages their space and relied on the kages, who were selected through a daimyo's approval and only retained power with their approval, and any agents they placed within the village to protect their interests. Granted, the system wasn't perfect, but it was probably the best system available without driving all the bureaucrats involved completely mad. That was probably what had gotten the daimyo to offer his support to Tsunade so readily for some of the political-heavy drafts she sent. The man didn't understand how the village's politics flowed or which factions he would be offending. For example, the fire daimyo was probably only vaguely aware of the Hyuga clan's curse seal, probably only knowing of its existence and how it worked. He probably didn't even realize that the draft was directly designed to outlaw that seal in particular. Tsunade briefly wondered if the man would have agreed if he did understand. From the way the man's letter read out, he thought the seals described in the letter constituted some form of slavery, and was vehemently against their use. She quickly shook her head to dismiss the thought. It didn't matter now that she already had the man's approval. After looking through the approved documents, she went back to her previous task, looking through the files on several other possible applicants for apprenticeship. Tsunade wanted to obtain a few more sets of hands before she left, hopefully too if she could find some decent applicants. The reason was quite simple: she wanted a full 4 shinobi team. Both she and Shizen would be acting as active instructors for the group, but she wanted the squad she was hoping to form to be able to act without their interference or support. Shizen had brought her a number of files within the criteria she'd set, genin ranked, to ensure that they were still young enough to not be too deeply mired in village politics, non-QB orphans or similar status, to ensure fewer links to the village and a lack of resentment to Naruto, and preferably kunoichi, due to naturally higher chakra control. Unfortunately, that narrowed the list down a bit too far. There was currently only a dozen files on her desk, and the ones she'd already looked through were killing her hopes of getting even a single other apprentice. Most of the girls listed in the files were either completely useless, academy fangirls that had somehow managed to graduate, or lacked the characteristics she was looking for. Tsunade had only gotten through half of them, and she was ready to quit and get a drink when Shizen's voice came in over the intercom. "Tsunade-sama, there's a Miss Tenten here who wishes to see you." Tsunade arched an eyebrow in recognition of the name. Looking over the half of the files she still hadn't gotten to reading yet, she found the same name. Guessing that there probably weren't two girls with the same strange name, she quickly replied over the intercom, "Tell her that she can come in if she's willing to wait a few minutes," she ordered as she picked up the file. There was a moment of silence before Shizen responded, "She's more than willing to wait, Tsunade-sama." Opening the girl's file, Tsunade quickly did a brief scan through on all the data she had on the girl. She was a war orphan, having lost her father in the last war and her mother due to complications in childbirth. She was at least a moderately skilled kunoichi, trained in a variety of weapons techniques. Her chakra control was slightly above average, which was normal for a kunoichi, but not at an extraordinary level, though she did show some promise given her skilled manipulation of several dozen thrown weapons using ninja wire, a task that would require impressive control in order to charge and manipulate so many wires at once, during the Chunin exam preliminaries was worth any note. However, it was the girl's psyche profile that caught Tsunade's attention. The girl had a naturally high sense of curiosity, and a very pragmatic and logical mind, not to mention a profound distaste for weakness. She also appeared to have a strong desire to prove that kunoichi were capable of equaling any male shinobi, and had a slight case of idol worship when it came to her. Normally Tsunade found idolization, particularly of her, annoying at best and dangerous at worst, since it could easily blind someone to their idol's faults, but this time she could make an exception. The girl showed all the right markers that she needed for a good apprentice. Added to that, the girl had prior interactions with Naruto during the Chunin exams. Granted, the interaction was limited, but it could be used to see about the girl's feelings about the boy. Reaching out, Tsunade pressed the button on her intercom and announced, "You can send her in now, Shizen." "Hi," confirmed Shizen, and a few moments later the large doors to the Hokage's office opened and Tenten stepped inside. "Tenten, was it?" asked Tsunade, getting a slightly nervous nod from the bun-haired girl. "Well then, Tenten, what can I do for you?" she asked politely. Tenten was nervous, strike that she was beyond nervous. She was standing in front of her idol, the legendary slug Sannin, Tsunade Senju, and she was about to ask a question that could result in a major shitstorm depending on the woman's views. I was wondering if there was any truth to the rumors going around the village that Naruto-san was being banished, stated the girl, mustering as much confidence as she could. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at the question. And what, pray tell, is your reasoning for this question? From what I've read, your contact with Naruto has been minimal at best, responded the Sannin. Tenten gulped. Well, the guy's helped out both my teammates a lot. First he helped Niji get the stick pulled out of his ass, and then he convinced you to come back to Konoha and help heal Lee's injuries. I just feel I don't know, that I owe the guy for all the help he's given my teammates, answered Tenten confusedly as she rubbed the back of her head. Tsunade had to suppress the small grin that wanted to break out on her face at the girl's answer. It was a good response that showed at least a small amount of respect for the Gaki. I'm saddened to report that the rumors you've been hearing are indeed true. Against my wishes, the council has acted to banish Naruto Uzumaki from Konoha, she finished coldly, letting some of her distaste for the council's decision become known. This immediately caught Tenten's attention. If you're so against it, why is it still happening? Questioned the girl, her natural curiosity getting the better of her. The Honorable Council offered me a choice, responded Tsunade. Either I agree to banish Naruto from Konoha, or they would head to the Fire Daimyo with a large number of trumped-up charges in order to have the boy executed. Finished Tsunade, her distaste showing in her voice. Tenten was really getting curious now. Why? She asked curiously. What do they all have against Naruto? She asked. Tsunade thought for a moment on how to reply to this question. Shikamaru was already planning on telling the rest of the genin the truth anyway after she and her group made their little escape. It couldn't hurt to spread the news a little early as long as she made sure the girl couldn't spread it herself. Well, Tenten-san, the truth behind that is an S-class secret, with openly telling it being a crime punishable by death. However, I doubt that it will remain in place for long after Naruto's banishment. So as long as I have your assurances to keep it until the law has been revoked, I see no issue in sharing it with you now. Do you understand me so far, Tenten-san? Tenten rapidly nodded her head, her own innate curiosity growing out of control. Good, but first a little demonstration to get the point across, agreed Tsunade as she pulled out a sealing scroll and a kunai from her desk. Holding up the scroll, she asked, Do you know what this is? It's a scroll with a basic storage seal, answered Tenten. She'd studied the basics of sealing when she was in the academy, and understood the basic principles enough to use storage and explosive seals extensively in her combat style. Right, and this? Questioned Tsunade, holding up the kunai. A kunai? Answered Tenten, not sure where this was going. Correct again, agreed Tsunade, before she placed the kunai on the storage seal and channeled some chakra to seal away the weapon. Holding the now sealed kunai and scroll up, she asked a final question, and this? A scroll with a kunai sealed in it, stated Tenten calmly. She was starting to get annoyed. What does all this have to do with Naruto's big secret? She mentally questioned in annoyance. Are you sure it's not the kunai itself? Asked a smirking Tsunade. Yes, stated Tenten in a slight annoyed fashion. That's one of the basic rules of storage seals and Fuinjutsu in general. A seal cannot change the basic nature of an object. She quoted from the sealing textbook she'd first read. Congratulations, Tenten, you've just proven yourself smarter than the vast majority of this village, stated Tsunade with a large smile. Huh? Questioned the girl intelligently. You see, Tenten, approximately 15 years ago, Tsunade gave the girl the brief rundown on everything that happened. The Kyuubi being sealed into Naruto. The fourth's dying wish. The village's blatant refusal to accept said dying wish. All the way up to the recent Sasuke retrieval mission and the recent results. The only things she kept quiet were her own plans and Naruto's new abilities. Tenten's mind was completely blown at the revelation. But that's impossible. What you just told me violates everything Konoha has ever stood for. Naruto's never earned that kind of treatment, no one has, just for having to act as a living storage scroll for a monster like the Kyuubi, exclaimed Tenten. Tsunade's smile grew another inch or two hidden behind her folded hands. Those are my thoughts exactly, Tenten-san, and the reason behind a recent decision of mine, stated the woman warmly. What decision? Questioned Tenten curiously, as Tsunade stood and stared out the room's large windows. I'm leaving Konoha, she stated bluntly, getting a soft gasp from the girl behind her. The village that my grandfather and great-uncle tried so hard to nurture and grow has become nothing more than a rotten husk. I've seen a lot of stupidity from Konoha in all my life, but what they're doing to Naruto is the final straw. In a few days I intend to cut all my ties with this village and leave beside Naruto. She turned around and looked at the girl sitting in front of her, and I'd like you to come along, she finished with a slight smirk. What? Asked Tenten. What I'm offering you is a position as my fourth apprentice. A chance to study under me, and learn things you probably could never learn under Konoha's current regime. Shizen has already filled the role of my first apprentice for most of her life, Naruto's number 2, and another young lady has already accepted my offer to become number 3, answered Tsunade. I don't know, Tenten's voice trailed off. On one hand, this was like a dream come true. She was being offered the chance to study under one of the greatest kunoichi of all times, and all she would have to do is abandon her home. I'm not expecting you to answer straight away. I'd actually be disappointed if you did. You have friends in the village, and it's been your home for your entire life. But I want you to consider this. After learning what you have, does this village deserve your loyalty? A village that would turn on one of its own for no other reason than what he contains. As I said before, you don't have to answer now, but I intend to leave soon. I'd like your answer by early Friday at the latest. She finished. Tenten nodded her head slowly at this before getting up and bowing before turning and heading out the door. After several moments, Tsunade activated her intercom and asked Shizen to come in. The younger woman was in the office a moment later. I want you to keep an eye on Tenten-san. The girl seems sympathetic to our cause, but I don't want to risk her telling the council. Just keep an eye on her, and if she lets anything slip to anyone less than trustworthy, knock them both out until after our date of departure, she instructed. Hi, Tsunade-sama, agreed Shizen before she departed. Sitting back down at her desk, Tsunade began to look through the remaining 5 folders. Maybe she'd get lucky and find another potential diamond in the rough. Hyuga Mansion, 2 days before departure. Hinata Hyuga was currently in her parents' room, particularly the large closet inside her parents' room. She had already finished packing most of her things. She couldn't bring everything so as not to raise suspicions, but the girl had managed to acquire most of her most important possessions: her favorite jacket, her book of pressed flowers, and several photographs. Most of the photos were of her and her team, though most of those now had a large hole where Kiba used to stand, but 2 others stood out. The first was a class photo from her time at the academy where she finally got a chance to stand next to Naruto. The picture itself was zoomed in to just show a 10-year-old her and Naruto standing side by side. The other one was a photo of her family, her father with the same disapproving look on his face while Hinata and Hanabi stood to either side. It was looking over those photos that she realized she had nothing to remember her mother by, and so she had mustered up enough courage to ask her father if it was okay to take something of her mother's from their room to help her remember her during her journey. Hayashi had been less than pleased about it, muttering something about useless sentimentality, but had bid her to do as she wished as long as she was out of his room and ready to depart for the Hokage's tower within 2 hours. The man had just finished gathering the necessary copies of the main family's Juken scrolls earlier the same day. It had taken more than a little persuasion on his part to get the Hyuga elders to agree to allow copies of the scrolls to be made, but in the end Hayashi had convinced them that the benefits far outweighed the risks on this endeavor. A few hours ago he had told Hinata that she'd be departing for the Hokage's tower to meet her new teacher this evening. She would be staying with the Hokage until she returned to the Leaf after completing her training journey. Hinata had to look away at the mentioning of her training journey to make sure she didn't give anything away, hiding it as a way to not meet her father's cold gaze, and heading off to her parents' bedroom. Now she stood in the closet of the large barren room, hoping that her father had stowed something of her mother's in the back after she'd died. Hayashi had always been a cold man who refused to dwell on the past. When both his brother and wife died, the man had all traces of them removed from his rooms in the Hyuga compound. As Hinata continued her search into the very back of the rather extensive closet, she came across something strange. As she moved through the closet, a particular floorboard gave a soft creak. It was barely audible, but Hinata's training as a shinobi scout under Kurenai had sharpened the girl's hearing enough to notice it quite clearly. Most would dismiss this, thinking it nothing more than a loose floorboard, but Hinata knew that the Hyuga clan were perfectionists in maintaining their clan compound, and they never allow such a thing to exist in their maintenance if it wasn't intentional. Activating her Byakugan, Hinata studied the errant floorboard. From her perspective, nothing appeared wrong, nothing that would warrant the wood to release such a noise. That explained why the squeaky board had never been discovered. The Hyuga relied heavily on their Byakugan in all parts of their lives, including home maintenance. If the Byakugan said there was no reason for the board to squeak, then the board didn't squeak. That was the Hyuga way of thinking. Curiosity growing, Hinata applied pressure to the errant floorboard and once again heard the soft squeak. The odd part was that the sound didn't seem to originate from the movement of the board, since she'd barely touched it, but from the board itself. Hinata got down on her knees with her Byakugan still active as she studied the board in greater detail. At first it appeared to be nothing more than a normal floorboard, and then Hinata noticed something. 2 of the edges were smoother and slightly indented, almost like handles. It wasn't really clear, and could easily be passed off as just a natural groove in the wooden paneling, but combined with the intended squeak, it spoke to one thing alone: a hidden compartment. Focusing her dojutsu, Hinata tried to pierce the offending wooden board and found nothing, just another part of the empty understructure of the Hyuga manor. She was just about to release her dojutsu and give up when something caught her attention, a spider's web. The small little web seemed to start in the middle of a nearby floorboard, and stretch beneath the squeaking board. Only the edges of the web beneath the board seemed to connect to nothing. Normally it wasn't something even a Hyuga's advanced sight would notice unless they were studying that particular section of flooring, but it was enough for Hinata to confirm that something was wrong. So with as much delicacy as she could muster, the timid Hyuga gripped the rim and lifted the board. It surprisingly came up with barely any effort on Hinata's part. Laying the board on its back next to her, Hinata noticed a small engraving in the center of the wood. A seal? To make that noise without any cause? Mentally questioned the young Hyuga. Turning her attention back to the new hole in the floor, Hinata's breath caught in her throat. Resting at the bottom of the hole, supporting the small spiderweb, was a box. It was deep purple in color and barely large enough to contain more than a single, large scroll. Engraved across its surface in bright, silvery ink were several dozen symbols, the seals that blocked the Byakugan from noticing the box. But it wasn't the box itself or the seals that caused the young Hyuga's breath to catch, but the words delicately traced into the box's top, "To my little sunshine." The nickname her mother used to call her when she was just a little girl. And Hinata means a sunny place. "Oka-san," whispered Hinata as tears filled her eyes. Shaking her head to push away the tears, Hinata hid the small box into folds of her jacket, before replacing the board and leaving the closet and heading toward her own room. She didn't want anyone to find out she had it, couldn't let anyone know she'd found it. Her mother had taken pains to hide the box away from the prying eyes of the Hyuga clan. Whatever was on it, she didn't want anyone else to find. If they did, they would take it away from her, prevent her from having this last fragment of her beloved mother. She would not allow that to happen. Finally arriving back at her room, Hinata opened the door and slipped inside, taking the box out of her jacket as she opened the traveling bag holding all her clothes and other important items. Gently Hinata arranged her contents, until she slipped the small box in a corner before using several small items to keep it from moving. Anyone looking inside with the Byakugan would see nothing unusual, just a girl's bag filled with neatly stacked clothing and a few photos tucked in a corner, the box's seals blocking it from view, while its position would never show it. Granted, all someone had to do was open the bag to find the box, but no one in the Hyuga clan would be rude enough to do that. They'd just quietly scan it with their Byakugan. She so wanted to see whatever was in the box now, but knew she couldn't risk it, couldn't risk her father noticing and taking it away from her. So she sat and waited. Once she arrived at the Hokage's tower, she could look. A little over an hour later, her father arrived. Standing up off her bed, Hinata placed her bag over her shoulder and walked forward, her face an empty mask, though the Hyuga had noticed some hints of anticipation on the girl's face, but passed them off as the fool girl being excited about her training journey. "Did you find anything of your mother's?" he asked, completely calm, a perfect mask of Hyuga stoicism. "And no, father," spoke Hinata, looking down. Hayashi, though it was a show of shame or disappointment, while it was really nothing more than a way to avoid meeting her father's gaze. While his daughter's gaze was averted, Hayashi quickly activated his Byakugan to scan the girl's bag to make sure she hadn't taken anything she shouldn't have. Standard Hyuga procedure, not to mention paranoia. "A shame," he stated coldly, though his voice spoke of no such remorse. "Ko will escort you to the Hokage's tower." He then held up a small satchel filled with scrolls. "These are the scrolls the Hokage requested. I hope you'll ensure that nothing happens to them," he stated without any confidence in his voice. "Oh, of course, father, I'll see they are promptly delivered to Tsunade Shusho's hands," she stated nervously, though more nervous of her father catching her than disappointing the cold man. "Good," he stated before turning and promptly leaving the girl behind, without as much as a proper goodbye. Hinata let out a soft sigh before taking up both the satchel and her bag and departing the Hyuga mansion, perhaps for the final time. Konoha Training Grounds, day before departure. The light of the sun was just beginning to touch the forests and field of Konoha's training ground. Normally the rising sun would find the fields empty of all but the most ardent trainees, but one particular training ground had a sole occupant. A young brown-haired kunoichi who was currently hacking at several training dummies with a katana. Tenten hadn't been able to sleep the night before, the truth behind Naruto and Tsunade's offer burning in her brain. So as the sun rose, she did what Guy had told them to do whenever they were confused or unsure of something train. It was surprisingly good advice. The calm, repetitive motions of her training exercises helped her focus her mind so she could think more clearly. As she trained, her mind turned over the recent events that had transpired and the decision she now had to face. The truth about how Naruto had been treated disgusted and angered the young kunoichi on an almost instinctive nature. Konoha was a village that was supposed to be based on unity, acceptance, and teamwork. And yet Naruto's only crime was having the bad luck to be born on the wrong day, and being chosen to save the village, and he was treated like the plague, or worse. Tenten highly doubted Tsunade had given her the whole story about Naruto's mistreatment, but she doubted any of it would put Konoha in a better light. It was just so wrong. Konoha wasn't supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be a place where everyone got the same chances no matter what their circumstances. Thoughts of Naruto then began to lead to thoughts of Tsunade's offer. Tenten couldn't say that the offer wasn't tempting. If she was being completely honest, it was nearly irresistible. Here was an opportunity she'd, literally, dreamed about for years, a chance to study under the greatest kunoichi to ever come out of the Leaf Village. Tenten could barely imagine the things the woman would be able to teach her, the things she could learn under the tutelage of one of the Sannin. It all seemed like something right out of one of her dreams. But it wasn't a dream, and even the best bargain had a price, and in this case it was her loyalty to the village. Tenten was a pragmatic girl and, despite her high opinion of the village, knew that the Leaf had its share of problems. She'd grown up on her own, one of many war orphans born in the chaos of the Third Great Shinobi War, and like most had entered the Shinobi Academy in hopes of bettering her lot in life. As she had grown up, she'd found a passion for shinobi work, for the sense of power and control the training offered her, something her earlier life had sorely lacked. Even after learning how far the Leaf seemed to have fallen from its lofty standards and ideals, the village was still the only place she'd ever really called home. It was where she'd grown up, where she'd gotten her first part-time job in the academy helping out at a local weapon shop, where she'd learned the skills that made her the kunoichi she was today. Added to that was her team who, despite her rather vehement denials, she had come to view almost as family over the past couple years they'd been together. A part of her was screaming to go to Tsunade to take the offer, while another wanted her to tell someone about what was happening before it hurt the village, and a third was telling her to let it happen without getting involved. Tenten sighed. I could really use some advice about now, she mentally prayed. As if answering her mental plea, Mato Guy made his appearance in front of her, scaring the girl enough to cause her to leap backward and ready her katana in a defensive stance before noticing his identity. Yash Tenten, my youthful, little student. Your flames of youth must surely be burning brightly to bring you out here so early in the morning, exclaimed the ever-energetic Jounin, giving her his patented nice guy pose complete with gleaming teeth, despite his back facing the rising sun. Damn it, Guy-sensei, would you stop sneaking up on me like that? Snapped Tenten before she remembered her earlier thoughts and decided to get some advice. Despite her teacher's odd habits and poor fashion sense, Tenten did respect the man a great deal. Sensei? Do you mind if I ask you for some advice, some private advice? Guy quickly noticed his usually fiery student's sudden confusion and quickly went from crazed goofball mode to serious sensei mode. Of course, Tenten, I hope you know you can ask me about anything and I will keep it in strictest confidence, he stated seriously. Tenten smiled slightly at that. While a complete oddball, Guy-sensei did know how to be serious when it really mattered. Well, ever since I got back to the village, I've been hearing these rumors about the Sasuke retrieval mission and how Naruto-san is being banished, she started. Guy nodded and frowned slightly at that. Like most Jounin, he'd been briefed on the retrieval mission, and was most displeased. He was actually quite fond of the young Uzumaki, seeing him as a strong-willed, hard-working, and youthful young man, in addition to being grateful for his help in both opening young Niji's eyes to his unyouthful beliefs about fate and his hatred toward the main branch of the Hyuga clan, and his aid in finding and convincing Tsunade-sama to return to the Leaf to help heal youthful Lee. In Guy's mind he, along with the remainder of his team, owed the boy a great debt. He personally planned on having a long and painful discussion with his former, unyouthful rival Kakashi after he was released from hospital. Well, I guess my curiosity got the better of me and I went to Tsunade-sama to hopefully get some answers, and I got them, but they weren't what I was hoping for, stated Tenten, looking away. What kind of answers? Asked Guy. I learned about it. Noting Guy's curious look. You know what's sealed inside Naruto, she stated uncomfortably. Guy's eyebrows seemed to merge with his hair for a moment at that comment, before he calmed himself down and asked, and your opinion of young Naruto hasn't changed, I hope? No! Exclaimed Tenten angrily before calming down. The only thing Naruto's done wrong was having the bad luck to be born on the wrong day, she stated hotly. A smile soon made itself known on Guy's face as he reached out and patted his student's head affectionately. I'm most glad you feel that way, Tenten, and I wish your opinion was shared by the rest of the village. Tenten smiled a little at that before her face fell. Well, that's not what's bothering me, at least not all of it. You see, I told Tsunade-sama my opinion on the matter, and she seemed pleased with it. Then she offered me an apprenticeship under her, she blurted out. What's the problem with that, Tenten? I believe such a thing would make you incredibly happy. To be an apprentice under Tsunade-sama was a youthful dream of yours, wasn't it? Asked a slightly confused Guy. It is, but Tsunade-sama told me that if I agreed I'd have to. Tenten tried to say it all, but couldn't, knowing that saying it outright would betray Tsunade's trust in her. Deciding a partial truth was better than an outright lie. Tenten finished. Leave the village for a long time. I see, stated Guy calmly. Despite popular belief, Guy was no idiot. Granted, the man was no Nara, but a man didn't survive it to Jonin and make it through all the tough scrapes he'd been through without at least some brain power. He knew Tenten, and even if it meant leaving her team and home for a time, she would gladly accept, even if she'd be a bit depressed about it. No, this was deeper than that, and it didn't take Guy long to figure out what it was. The only reason that he could see Tenten having so much division over leaving the village was if she knew that they had no intention of coming back. This put Guy at a quandary. He knew that Tsunade would take drastic action when hearing of young Naruto's banishment. Hell, he half expected her to slaughter the entire council and go on a rampage after hearing it, but this was a surprise. For Tsunade, the granddaughter of the village's founder and current leader, to willingly sever all ties to Konoha, it was almost unthinkable. Guy understood her motives though. Everyone who heard of the mission knew, though many denied it, that it was Naruto who convinced the woman to come back to Konoha and accept the mantle of Hokage. With the same boy being banished, Tsunade's reason for returning, and perhaps staying, left with him. The real quandary was what to advise his student to do. After several minutes of thought, Guy let out a small sigh before speaking. I believe it would be for the best if you accepted Tsunade-sama's offer. I will admit that I haven't been the best teacher for you, he started. Tenten instantly looked up at the man. But Guy-sensei, that she started only for Guy's finger to come up. Please let me finish, Tenten. I know I haven't been able to teach you as much as either Lee or Niji, and that I tend to focus a lot of extra training time on Lee, but I have always been proud to call you my student. I know full well what this means, and I say that you should because I believe it's what would be best for you. It has long been your dream to become a superior young kunoichi, one that could surpass any shinobi, and by training with Tsunade you will get that chance. I know Lee, myself, and even Niji will miss you dearly, but you need know you must chase your dreams with all the fires that burn within you, no matter where they lead you. All I ask is that you stay true to your dream and to yourself no matter where you go, and you will have made me proud to have once been your sensei. He finished, happily returning to his good guy pose with a roaring inferno forming behind him. Tenten quickly wiped a few tears away before muttering, "Thanks, Guy-sensei." Before embracing the spandex-wearing nutball, she proudly called sensei in a quick hug, before turning around and heading toward the Hokage's tower. She had a sannin to see and an apprenticeship offer to accept. Guy watched her walk off with a proud smile on his face, before he turned slightly and said, "You can come out now, Shizen-san," he stated in a friendly tone. Shizen quickly dropped out of a nearby tree. "I'm glad to hear we have your support, Guy-san," stated Shizen calmly. "Yes, while I personally don't agree with abandoning the village just yet, not until I'm sure its flames of youth have been fully extinguished, I can understand Tsunade's reasoning. Besides, it would be very unyouthful to have a Hokage forced to retain her position," stated Guy calmly. Shizen nodded her head as she leapt off to meet her newest fellow apprentice as she arrived at the tower. Hopefully, Tenten wouldn't find her prospective sensei passed out drunk on her desk. That would really damage the teacher-apprentice relationship and respect a little too early. Hokage's mansion, day before departure. Hinata sat in a chair, nervous tension pulsing through most of her body, early in the morning at the Hokage's mansion. Ko had escorted her to the Hokage's office yesterday evening, and they had arrived just as Tsunade was preparing to leave for the evening. Tsunade had greeted the two of them as they arrived and took the scrolls into her possession before dismissing Hinata's escort. As the newly minted master and apprentice walked toward the Hokage's manor, Hinata explained to her new mentor about the scroll box she'd found and who she believed it was from. When they'd arrived, Tsunade had given the box a thorough examination, making sure there were no traps or other nasty surprises hidden among the anti-detection seals. The only other seal she found was a blood seal near the base of the box, keyed to a specific person's blood in order to unlock it. By the end of the examination it was getting late, and Tsunade suggested they both get some sleep before opening it in the morning. Hinata had protested at first, but eventually Tsunade managed to convince her, and the two had went to sleep, Hinata taking one of the guest rooms while Tsunade took her usual room. Now morning had come and Hinata sat in the center of the mansion's main sitting room. In front of her, resting on a desk, was the box. Tsunade stood on the other side of the desk, ready to make sure that nothing went wrong and that there were no extra surprises hidden inside.